national broadcast, I guess. I don't know what happened to Zion.
I think he's indisposed, Judge.
Okay. Of course.
No, he went to get a witness.
He's right there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Get that a lot.
Hopefully he's not ready for him.
Yeah.
Is he still around?
No, it's just part of getting old. Mother Nature's a cruel mistress.
Yeah, better? Better? Okay.
The problem is, everybody needs to stay at their microphone. Like when people walk away,
If it works.
that's when I get, I know it's not your fault, but I can't decide if they're away.
I was always a walker, but I wasn't afraid to put a mic on either. But we couldn't do that in the old building.
Right? When you said power chart, is that like the name of the thing?
It's all one word, I think. And yeah, and that's part of the Cerner system.
Yeah. And Pharmacist, that's P-H-A-R-M, and all, is that all one word?
Yep,
I just
that's,
looked it up and I thought it looked like it was.
Okay,
but
yes.
you never know.
yep.
So are you good with all of
I'm
the
good.
clarifications?
Yeah.
All right. If any of us ask and they say a word, just say, I need the spelling. Just say it. Just interrupt.
Also, like, which one? For names, like Mr. Longstreth and Brigner, those, since those aren't like the indicted names, I didn't crack those. So if you could spell the, like the last name or something.
Do you want them now?
I don't know, I saw them.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And that just helps me.
I understand. Just give me a timeout and I'll stop and spell.
But there's so many names, but I can't remember which ones are predefined and which ones I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all rise. Thank you. Please be seated.
Before we get started, Mr. Zion, ladies and gentlemen, I went to the media during the break and looked at all the videos. There was a reflection of it was Mr. Zion when he got up here close off the light from there. None of you guys were on, okay? So we checked that out for you during the break. It shouldn't be a problem. Okay, Mr. Zion, you may continue on,
Thank you.
even though you were the reflection.
All right. Let's talk about Brandy McDonald. I'm going to show okay to publish, right?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to show everyone, with the consent of the defense, State's Exhibit 5B. For the record, it is the orders, the medication orders for Brandy L. McDonald. So, Mr. Schroyer, have you seen this document before as part of preparation for testifying today?
Yes.
All right, and this is for, like I said...
Hold on 1 second. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because this is a different screen than we're used to working with. I just wanted to make sure they could see it okay.
Yes, sir.
Continue on.
And what date was she admitted on?
1/11/18,
And what date was she discharged on?
1/14/18.
Okay. Showing you this 5B, which is a medication orders document from her medical records. Did she receive fentanyl?
Yes.
And who was that given, who was the ordering physician?
Dr. William Husel?
And we see an RN, so that would be Jamie Burke was the RN.
Yes.
And once again, this was for, what was the concentration at the top there?
Fentanyl 50 micrograms per ml.
And that's
Yeah.
the bottle we saw?
No, that's the concentration. This was written for a 20 ml vial.
Okay,
Or
so
ordered as a 20
a
ml.
bigger bottle?
Yeah.
All right. And what were the order details for Brandy McDonald on 1/14, which is the date of this order?
1,000 micrograms, IV push, inject, a one-time order, routine urgency, similar to the other ones, ordered at 21/31.
Mm-hmm.
It was completed at 21/51. And it was pharmacist verified at 2200.
All right. Now, can you tell whether this was a prospective or a retrospective based on this document?
Based on this document, retrospective.
Retrospective. Now, for the next ones we're going to be talking about, I've also shown you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 24E. And once again, we got this overhead thing. Just as I slide it on across, do you recognize what this document is, 24E?
Yes.
And what is 24E in general and then specifically?
In general, it looks like a Pyxis report.
Okay. Before you go further, tell the folks what a Pyxis report is.
Sorry, Pyxis report. It's a printout of all the activity that happened on that Pyxis machine.
Is it patient-specific, this report?
This report is, yes, patient name, Brandy McDonald.
Okay. And does it appear, based on the dates on the Pyxis report, to be related to 5B, the same hospital admission for Brandy McDonald between 1/11 and 1/14?
Appears to, yes.
Okay. And the first medication appears to be, transaction date was 1/12/18? Is that correct?
Yep.
And then going to the last page of 24E, the last one would have been on 1/14/2018? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes.
So is 24E all the medications per the Pyxis report that Brandy McDonald received during her hospitalization between January 11th of 2018 and January 14th of 2018?
Ask that again, please.
Is 24E, the Pyxis log report for Brandy McDonald,
Right.
is that the medication from the Pyxis machine that she received for this hospital stay?
Yes.
Let's go through the columns at the top first. Station name, what does that mean?
What's underneath it? Let me see the first.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
That was the room number.
Okay, so that's where she's staying? That's her bed? Transaction date and time, just when it occurred? What's username mean?
The user that was signed into Pyxis.
And then patient name is Brandy McDonald, right?
Yep.
And then that's just an ID number from the hospital? What does this mean, transaction type?
I don't remember. Without seeing the other options,
Well, there's another option at the bottom.
integrated weights. Okay, so, I don't rightly recall. Integrated waste, I know, that was where if you withdrew a medication and didn't use it all, and it was a controlled substance like, I think that was lorazepam, you had to document what happened to the part you didn't use. So it's a controlled substance, they as the hospital, track very closely all of it, all the time. So if you got, I don't know how much was in this vial, but let's just say it was a 5 ml vial and you used 2, that 3 has to be accounted for. So you could document that you wasted it, got rid of it, in the Pyxis machine.
So you wasted it. What does that mean? You threw it away?
I don't know what the nurses did with it physically, but this is documenting, saying that part of that lorazepam that was probably the one drawn above it, it was the Venn order above it, integrated waste below it. The way I would read this is that somebody withdrew lorazepam, they did not use it all, and because they did not use it all, the remainder has to be accounted for. So the way that it was accounted for in this case is it was wasted. What physically happened to it, I don't know.
That'd be a question for one of our nurses. Okay. And
Did you say something?
Oh, I nodded, yes. Question for the nurse.
And then, once again, we have Med ID. Is that just something specific? What is that?
I can't see that.
Oh, gosh, I'm terrible at this. Med ID, right here.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Med description, what is that?
A description of the med, so it tells you what it was.
Okay.
Or is.
Dispense amount, what does that mean?
How much was withdrawn?
Quantity, what does that mean?
Can you scroll over a little bit? Oh, okay. Dispense amount looks like strength. So I'm down at Tylenol, Tylenol at the bottom here. Acetaminophen, 325 milligrams. Dispense amount was 650 milligrams. That would be a quantity of 2.
All right, so for instance, you're pointing at the third one up from the bottom on January 14th of 2018 at 3:21 a.m., someone named Racy Wilkins got for Brandy McDonald acetaminophen at this strength, 650 milligrams, and Racy Wilkins got 2 of those for Brandy.
No.
No?
No, 650 milligrams was the total dose
Uh-huh.
or total amount withdrawn. So 650 milligrams. What is in the Pyxis is 325 milligram tablets.
Got it.
So 2 of those equals 650.
Got it, okay. Now, let's talk about this last column. What does that say at the top there? And then explain the answers in that column, or what's indicated in that column.
Override.
So what does override mean?
That literally the button, or the override function was used in the Pyxis.
So that picture of the Pyxis machine where you said there's an override button,
Right.
they can just hit that and it pops open, they get their medicine.
Yes.
And in those cases, if they put the order in, you get it retrospectively.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go, and you said looking at 5B, based on the times, you can tell this is retrospectively, looking at 5B and looking at the times of this medication for fentanyl and midazolam, you can tell it's retrospective. Does the Pyxis log also tell us that with this last column? Looking at the last page of 24E, third one up from the bottom, this is January 14th at 21:33. That would be the nurse's name, Jamie Burke. Is that right?
Yes.
Gave Brandy McDonald fentanyl, right?
Yep.
And you said this is the strength size, right?
That's the thing in, that's the description of what is physically in the machine.
Okay. And looks like Jamie Burke got 900 micrograms out, right?
Yes?
And so the quantity is 9.
Correct.
Now, override, what does that indicate?
That the override function on the Pyxis machine was utilized.
So that would have come through to you as retrospective review.
If an order was put in after the fact, yes.
And then the very next column, we have fentanyl at 100 micrograms. Is that right?
Yes.
And these are within 20 seconds of each other? Is that right?
Yes.
So that's the 1,000 micrograms we see on the orders. And then we've got on this last column, midazolam, right?
Right.
And for the record, that is midazolam. It says in parentheses, Versed. What does that mean?
That's the brand name of the medication.
All right. So midazolam and Versed are the same thing.
Yes.
And that was 6 milligrams.
Yes.
And to get to 6 milligrams, Nurse Burke had to pull out 3 vials.
Yes.
And was that done on override?
Yes.
We've talked a lot about fentanyl, but Jamie Burke was getting fentanyl and an IVP push of midazolam. What class of drug is midazolam/Versed?
A benzodiazepine.
Okay. And what is a benzodiazepine based upon your training and experience as a pharmacist? What is benzodiazepine? What is this used for?
Anxiety, mostly. In the case of midazolam, it's used for sedation, mostly.
All right.
Can I have that exhibit, please?
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm going to use your exhibit from yesterday. So I'm going to use defense exhibit DX-MCD1. MCD, I think it's actually MCD DX1, the big poster board. So yesterday, Mr. Baez said, pointing at Brandy McDonald, which is, where is she on this? Right here, pointing at Brandy McDonald. He said, Brandy McDonald was given 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl. That's true, isn't it?
Yes.
And then he pointed to here, there's not a column here, but he pointed and said,
Your Honor, I'm just objecting to the form as to what Mr. Baez says. Mr. Shore wasn't here.
Okay, I agree. Let's take it out in full form.
okay, if that was said in his courtroom yesterday by someone, and said, Brandy McDonald was approved by pharmacy. Was Brandy McDonald approved by pharmacy? You're the pharmacist. Did you approve that?
I wouldn't use the word approve, no.
What word would you use?
Retrospectively, the order was verified, but it all happened before it was given before we were made aware of it.
And what do you do with those retrospective things in your queue?
You just verify them to get rid of them.
So where was pharmacy on Brandy McDonald?
Unaware?
Bonnie Austin. States Exhibit 10B, 24J. Publishing, for the record, Bonnie Austin's orders, medication orders, States Exhibit 10B. When she came in, what date?
9:30?
What date was she discharged?
9:30?
So let me ask you this, we're using discharge. What if someone dies in the hospital? What term did they use? Are you aware?
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Discharge date of the same day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at this order sheet, does this appear to be fair and accurate?
Appears to be.
All right, so on 9/30 of 2018, How much did Bonnie Austin, what did Bonnie Austin get?
There was an order of fentanyl, ordered at 23:10.
Okay, and 23:10, what time, what does that mean, in case people aren't aware of?
11:10 in the evening, 11:10 p.m.
All right, and just for clarification, this is a 24-hour clock, like military time?
Correct.
So 23:10 translates to,
11:10 p.m.
okay. So that's right after you get on, or is that right after the daytime people leave, or the evening people leave?
Second one. Right after the evening left at 11.
Okay. And who ordered it?
Dr. William Husel,
And how much of this fentanyl, at this dose, at this strength rather, did he order?
600 micrograms, IV push, inject once, routine order.
All right, and so, and this was done by a nurse, Ebro?
Yep.
And then also, did Bonnie Austin get something else at that same time?
Midazolam,
All right, and so is this also at the same time as the fentanyl?
appears to be yes.
And how much midazolam, Versed, did Bonnie Austin receive?
6 milligrams, IV push, inject once, routine urgency.
What's that?
I was just reading the order there.
Okay,
Inject once, routine.
okay. And over 2 to 5 minutes? And that's the nurse again? All right. And here we have, and this is, I believe, on all of these orders, pharmacist verified, not reviewed. What does that mean to you?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's look at the 24J. Once again, do you recognize what 24J is for the record?
Yes.
And what is 24J?
A Pyxis log,
Specific to what patient?
Bonnie Austin.
And is it for the same date that we just saw those orders for?
Yes.
And so here we have, on the orders, we see 2 medications. What's this first column up here about?
NC unlocked door. Unlocked. It appears to be an override, last column, to unlock the refrigerated meds door.
So that would be the big thing next to the Pyxis machine?
Could be.
Okay. Let's talk about the medications here. Do these appear to be the medications that are indicated on those order forms?
Yes.
And who's Jason Sims?
The user that was signed into Pyxis.
Do you know if he was a nurse or not?
I do not.
Well, Jason Sims' name is certainly not this name here, right?
Correct.
Ebrow. And for the record, I'm referring back to 10B. It looks like the orders indicate it was entered and electrically signed by someone named Ebrow, RN. But on the Pyxis log, it looks like someone named Sims. Jason Sims is the person who's the user for these drugs. The person, not the person using Pyxis. All right, 600 milligrams. So he had to get 6 of those out,
600 micrograms, yes.
okay? And override,
Yes.
override. And then for the midazolam, 6 milligrams, and they come in 2 milligram vials, so had to get 3 of them, right? And override. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Right, yes. I'm shaking my head. I apologize.
We had them talking in your corner too, so.
Okay. So on Bonnie Austin, where is pharmacist? You're the pharmacist that's on those records. On Bonnie Austin, were you aware that that was going on?
No.
Did you set this system up?
No.
Let's talk about Jack Timmons.
No.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Are we good on these? Ms. Menashe, are we good on these?
Yes,
Jack Timmons. Showing you for what I've marked for identification purposes, has State's Exhibit 11B. Jack Timmons, when did he come into the hospital?
10/22/18,
When was he discharged from the hospital?
10/24/18,
Okay. Looking at 11B, the orders, the medications. Did Dr. Husel order any fentanyl for Jack Timmons during his hospital stay?
yes,
All right. So let's go through the fentanyl order. On 10/24/18, right?
right?
At 03, now is that 3 p.m. or is that 3 a.m.?
3 a.m.,
So this is during your shift, this is 3 a.m. in the morning.
correct,
Order status completed. Ordering physician, that's Dr. Husel, right?
right?
And this will be the nurse, Jacob Deemer, right?
Right?
And what's the order details?
1,000 micrograms IV push, inject once.
Okay. The midazolam, was that also given at the same time?
Appears to be yes.
And the physician,
Dr. William Husel,
the nurse,
Jake Deemer,
the amount?
10 milligrams IV push once.
Okay. Is there another medication given at this time?
Not right at this time, but it appears 5 minutes later, yes.
What is this medication?
Hydromorphone,
Can you please spell that for the record?
HYDROMORPHONE.
All right, and we got that lettering, because there must be something out there in the world that sounds like this. So, we also see that hydromorphone has, in the parentheses, what's this word?
Dilaudid,
And can you spell that for the record?
DILAUDID.
So why do we got two names up here?
Generic versus brand name,
Just like the Versed and midazolam,
correct.
okay? So 5 minutes after the fentanyl and the midazolam, we've got hydromorphone being ordered by who?
Dr. William Husel,
And the nurse,
Jake Deemer,
and the amount.
10 milligrams IV push once.
What is hydromorphone, Dilaudid, classified as?
An opiate,
What is fentanyl classified as?
an opiate,
Based on your training and experience as a pharmacist, is it advisable as a pharmacist to give a patient within 5 minutes of each other opioids from two different types of opioids at the same time, within 5 minutes of each other?
it depends.
Okay, it depends.
Wait, hold on.
It's a good lawyerly answer. All right.
Your Honor, I want to move to strike the lawyerly answer as to commentary on that.
Okay, that'll be stricken.
Thanks. It was actually his answer, was it depends.
It was, and she got that down. His commentary on the way back is stricken. You're
What-
disregard the lawyerly comment.
What does it depend on?
A lot of things.
Like what?
Doses, the condition of the patient overall, the opioid history of the patient, if they're new to opioids or if they've been on them for a long time. Every case would be different.
Okay. Turning the page on James Timmons here, to page 2 of 11B. He's gotten fentanyl, midazolam at 3 in the morning, hydromorphone at 3:05. We turn the page. In addition to the hydromorphone at 3:05, was there another drug ordered and given by Dr. Husel and Jake Deemer?
You pull it down a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
What, if any, other drugs were given to James Timmons per the orders?
At 3:05, it appears there was a completed order for midazolam, 20 milligrams IV push once.
Okay. And then finally, at 3:23,
3:23 was midazolam,
by Dr. Husel
correct,
and nurse,
Jake Deemer,
And how much?
10 milligrams IV push once.
Okay. So to summarize, if I may, between 3 a.m. and 3:23 a.m., the orders reflect that James Timmons was given 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl, 10 milligrams of midazolam, 10 milligrams of hydromorphine, 20 milligrams at 305 of midazolam, and another 10 milligrams of midazolam. Is that correct?
How did you start that? I don't need the drugs. What was the word you used? Did you say was ordered or was given?
Per the orders, this is what the orders reflect were ordered.
Correct.
Okay. That's what these records reflect.
That is what was ordered, correct.
All right. Looking at 24K, once again, this would be the Pyxis log for patient victim James Timmons. Is that correct?
Appears to be yes.
Let's go to the last page. Do we see these orders for fentanyl and midazolam here on the last page of 24K?
Yes.
Okay. So starting up here, the second column down, we see that at 10:24:18, at 2:34, Earl Huron, right? Do you know who Earl Huron is?
I do not.
It's not Jake Deemer, though, right?
Correct.
All
Well, I would assume so, yes.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I would assume that they are not the same person, yes.
Okay. Patient James Timmons, it looks like from the Pyxis log, someone named Earl Huron got how much fentanyl out?
800 micrograms.
And it looks like within a minute, Earl Huron for James Timmons got how much more fentanyl out?
200 micrograms.
And would that be equal to 1,000 micrograms?
Yes.
And would that correspond?
Hold on.
I need to correct something I said.
Go ahead.
I want to correct something I said earlier. You asked about the far left column. What was that? I said it was a room number. After seeing more of them, that's the Pyxis machine identity. It's not a room number. That is how they classified which machine it came out of. So I apologize, I misspoke.
Okay.
He was trying to blurt it out, and both of you were talking at the same time, and her poor fingers were starting to smoke, so we wanted to make sure, get it straight, now go back to where you were.
Okay. This is at 2:35 in the morning, right?
Right?
And this is at 2:34 in the morning, right?
Right?
Going back to 11B, and those two orders together equal 1,000 micrograms, right?
Right?
And here we have the order for 1,000 micrograms, right?
Right?
By Dr. Husel. Different nurse?
Correct? Different
Anybody?
nurse?
Just so everyone's clear, this is for James Timmons, and this is the same hospital stay, same day, right? Does the Pyxis...
Sorry, can you let the witness answer the question, Your Honor?
Just, can you move it over a little bit so I can see the date?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The date for James Timmons is?
10/24 was the order date, and the Pyxis report there. Yes. 10/24, yeah, okay. Correct.
Sir, does it appear that Earl Huron is pulling 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl out of the Pyxis machine almost a half hour before the order comes through?
It appears so, yes.
And what, if any, button is Nurse Huron pressing to get this fentanyl, 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl? What button is he pushing?
Judge, an override,
Oh, there we go.
Thanks for the assist.
Hold on, everybody. Okay. It's not one I've heard before, but
and I know my rules, but it's not one of those.
Yes,
I believe it calls for speculation
okay.
as to what another nurse would do.
Okay, overruled. Okay. Now, that we've dealt with that, do you remember the question?
No.
Let's re-ask the question.
According to State's Exhibit 24K, looking at the last column, going by the records, 24K, which you've identified has the Pyxis log for patient James Timmons, what button was pushed on the Pyxis machine to get this 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl out?
It was done via override.
And when you say that, that's the button on the machine, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And, I'm sorry, I'm just got to get used to this. And those come in retrospective to you.
Depends.
We'll get to that in just a minute. And then we see the midazolam, also on this page. Earl Huron, right? And getting this midazolam out. And what time did he get that out?
252.
And that is 8 minutes before Dr. Husel ordered it, right?
It would appear, yes. It would appear, yes.
And here we've got Emma Young, the next entry down. Oh, I'm sorry. Earl Huron also pulled the hydromorphine, also known as Dilaudid, out too, right?
Yes.
And this is also before the order was even entered into the machine, right?
Yes.
And then we've got someone named Emma Young, right?
Right?
Getting lorazepam out? Is that right?
Yep.
How much of lorazepam did she get out?
10 milligrams.
And this is for patient Jack Timmons, right?
James Timmons, yes.
James Timmons, my apology. What's lorazepam? For the record, spelled Lorazepam. What's lorazepam?
It's a benzodiazepine.
Is it a different type of benzodiazepine than midazolam?
It's a different medication, yes.
Okay, and lorazepam is also known as Ativan. We can see there.
Is that what the,
Oh, yes, I didn't realize it was a question, sorry.
Right,
Yes,
I'm just asking, yeah, that's so, once again, brand name versus generic name.
correct,
Ativan, for the record, is Ativan, and that was 10 milligrams, right?
correct.
That comes in 2 milligram doses, so Emma Young had to get 5 of those out, right?
Right.
These are all by override, correct?
The two I can see are yes.
Ah,
Yes.
okay, well, I'm not good at this. Thank you. Okay. And then we've got Emma Young for James Timmons getting lorazepam out, right? More lorazepam out, correct? We're looking at the second to bottom one, right?
Correct. No, this is, it looks like it's being wasted.
And this is being wasted. So that means it wasn't given, that's how you interpret this. You don't know the physical thing, how they do to waste it, but it means it wasn't given to the patient.
Whatever part of it is being wasted, correct.
And then finally, the last entry here on State's Exhibit 24K. Finally, we see Jake Deemer's name, right?
Right?
And he's the guy on the order for all of the meds, right?
Right?
He got more fentanyl out, correct?
No, that looks like a waste order.
Well, he got it out, but he had to waste it. He had to account for it, correct?
Say that again?
I mean, it's on here because it got out, but it wasn't given to the patient.
Objection leading also misstates the other.
I'll let him clarify. Do you understand the question?
I do not.
Okay. This waste you said here at the last line,
Right?
does that relate to the previous draw?
It may.
It may. Okay.
Okay. That was not done via override, or explain it to us then. If I'm misstating anything, please explain what these two columns mean, these last two rows mean.
Why don't you do this? Why don't you bring it up so he can take a good look at it, because you've got it so far back.
Well, I was told that I had to zoom out. I'm just doing my best here, Judge.
It's okay. We'll bring in a 13-year-old tomorrow to help.
I don't know what this means specifically, sorry, I was covering the mic. I know the waste function in Pyxis is there so that you can document medication not used, not given. That, it appears that that is what was done with lorazepam and fentanyl, but it doesn't have a quantity here. And I know it exists, I know that the nurses do it. How they do it, I don't know.
Yeah, we only want you to testify about what you know. All right. Based upon your knowledge of the matter that we're here for today, were those all the patients you were involved with?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay, that you've been questioned about specifically by everyone in this?
Yes.
All right. In preparation for today's trial, did I ask you to review a statement by the CDC guideline recommendation number 11? Or did your attorney ask you to review that at my request?
I'd like to see it, but I,
Okay, well, it's this thing. I was just going to read it because it's something we ask every single person that has not answered this.
Where is this in this one?
But this is just a matter of fact. It's not, this piece of paper.
It's not a medical fact. Where is that a discovery?
It's not, it's just a question I'm going to ask.
What's the question?
Are you familiar with the CDC guideline?
If you ask him guideline number 11, and without reading it to him, we'll see what he says, but you can't read on it.
I can certainly ask a statement and see if it's just because it's yes or no doesn't mean. Let's just see how it goes.
Okay, guys,
May I ask a question, Judge?
I would like for you to ask a question, and we'll see where we go with it.
Thank you, sir. Sir, based on your training and experience, are you aware of any risks involving the concurrent use of opioid pain medication and benzodiazepines?
yes.
And what are those risks?
Your Honor, first of all, I'd object. He's not been tendered as an expert. Also, we haven't been given what is being asked about in discovery.
Okay?
I'm not tendering him as an expert. He's a pharmacist with training and experience, and I'm asking based on his training and
So
experience.
that's the very definition of an expert, isn't it? Based upon training and experience, you want him to opine what the result is?
No, I'm just asking, was he trained or does he have experience with this of a risk between using opioid pain medications and benzodiazepines? And he said yes.
Okay?
And now I'm going to ask, what is that risk?
Aren't you asking for an opinion then?
No, I'm asking what his training and experience taught him.
Same objection, Your Honor. That's what an opinion is.
Okay. Lay some foundation before you get your answer.
In school, in pharmacy school, did you learn about benzodiazepines?
Yes.
Did you learn about opioid pain medication?
Yes.
And was that part of the test to become a pharmacist in the state of Ohio?
Specifically, I don't remember.
Is it part of the expected knowledge of a pharmacist in the state of Ohio?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you learn about concurrent use of opioid pain medication and benzodiazepines?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Do you want a voir dire?
Sure.
Take a shot.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Diane Menashe on behalf of Dr. Husel.
Hello?
You want me to call you Mr. Shore or Talon?
Talon's fine.
Talon? Awesome. You were just asked about your schooling, based upon your schooling, and then CDC guidelines. First of all, for the jury, what does CDC stand for?
Okay, let's do a voir dire.
Just, I'll get right to the questions about the CDC, but I first want to make sure the jury knows what CDC is.
Okay.
The Centers for Disease Control?
And as part of your schooling, did you learn about the CDC guidelines as a whole?
I don't recall.
You don't recall?
Right.
As part of your time at Mount Carmel, the relevant time of 2017 and 2018, did you have an opportunity while you were working at Mount Carmel Hospital to review the CDC guidelines, if you recall?
Would I have had an opportunity? Yes.
Did you?
Not that I recall.
Have you reviewed the entirety of the CDC guidelines between being terminated from Mount Carmel and today's date?
I have not.
Nothing further.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about experts before. You guys can give whatever value. I'm basically a gatekeeper. Okay, you guys can give whatever value you want based upon what you heard about his experience. Mr. Zion?
Thank you, sir. All right, just take the CDC out of this. Going back to what we said, you learned about benzodiazepines, right?
Right?
Do you recall that?
Yes.
You learned about opioid pain medications.
Yes.
What, if anything, did you learn about the concurrent use of them?
That the side effects, or I guess the effects period, can be synergistic.
Tell the jury what synergy means. And spell that, I don't know if, no, you got it? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm terrible.
Now, relax.
No, I'm not sure I could. I have to
Okay,
think about it. Spelling is not my strong suit.
That's okay.
So tell us about the synergistic effects, what that means.
Very quickly, that the sum is more than the parts. So when you get effect X with just this drug and effect Y with this drug, when you put them together, it might be more than 1 plus 1 might equal 3, basically.
Okay. Are there any risks associated with the concurrent use of narcotic pain medication and benzodiazepines?
Your Honor, asked and answered.
I'll permit it.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
I said you can answer.
Okay. Yes.
What are those risks?
This same risks of taking either one separately, just magnified. So specifics?
Yeah, specific risks. Yeah.
Largely respiratory depression.
What's respiratory depression?
Your desire, your automatic urge to breathe is reduced.
Thank you. Back to James Timmons. Now, did this come in, we saw it was done on override. How did you become aware of this? Was this retrospective or something else?
You said this is James Timmons?
This is James Timmons. This is on,
Yeah.
just to get you back, October 24th of 2018.
Okay.
You're in the Central Pharmacy. Who are you with?
Greg Dresbach?
Okay. It is, what time was that in the morning? 3 o'clock, was that it? Yeah, 3:05.
Okay.
How, if at all, you become aware of what's going on with James Timmons out there on the floor?
I got a phone call from one of the nurses.
Do you remember the name of the nurse?
I do not.
What, without telling us what that nurse said, what did you do next? Well, let me ask you this. What was the nature of the call? Was it a, for instance, was it a question? Was it a commentary?
It's transitional. I'm going to give you a little leeway here. Let's get to it.
Yes, the nurse had a question about the medication, the MAR, medication administration record.
And we've seen one of those today, earlier. Is that right? That's the question. Do you remember
Remember seeing
29
them on
BB?
here today?
Yes.
Okay. What was the question? Not for the truth of it, but what was the question, so we know what you did next, if any?
Question was,
Objection as to the question. It calls for hearsay. What did you do next? No objection to that portion of the question.
She's right technically. Re-ask.
Okay. What did you do based on this phone call?
what did I do based on this phone call?
Yeah, what's your next action? You're on the phone, the nurse says something, and the judge allows you to say it was a question about the MARS.
Right, I looked at the MAR.
You looked at the MARS. What happened next?
I saw the medications that had been given.
Go ahead. What?
I saw the medications that had been given according to the MAR.
What happened next?
I don't think much until the end of my shift at 7 in the morning. I mean,
Okay,
related to this,
well, what reaction, if any, did you have when you looked at the MARS, the medications that were given?
I see. I was shocked
Why were you shocked?
because there was, well, there were 4 medications given, or 4 sets of medications given, the grand total of which I thought was large.
The word you used was shocked?
Sure.
Well, you just said that, is that
Yes,
right?
shocked.
Are any other doctors ordering those amounts of medications that we saw for Jack Timmons?
Not that I've seen, no.
So you're shocked. What, if anything, do you do? Do you talk to Greg? What's going on? This is 3 in the morning. What happens next?
I may have talked to Greg, I don't remember specifically. What I do remember is writing down on a scrap of paper the patient's name and the doses and the times, and then I gave those to Randy when he got to work in the morning at 7.
Was this order even retrospective when that nurse called? Has it shown up in your queue yet?
I had never seen an order for those.
So this would be, what was talked about yesterday, a complete bypass of pharmacy.
To my knowledge, yes.
Is that part of your shock?
Yes.
So now, Mr. Timmons, referring back to NCD DX1, Mr. Timmons down here, on October 24th, where is pharmacy? Your testimony is that you're completely out of the loop at this point, not even retrospective?
Correct.
Did you set this system up?
No, sir.
This is always helpful, I don't mind interruption.
Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
So, what time's your shift in?
7.
Is that the next thing you can remember happening with the Jack Timmons stuff?
Yes.
You said, you told the folks here, you wrote it down on a piece of paper?
Right.
You mean like literally like a little piece of scrap paper?
Yes. Old-fashioned pen and paper.
What'd you write down, if you recall?
The patient's name, maybe the med-rec number, just so he could have been identified in the computer. It's an identifier for the patient, the drug and the strength, and the times they were administered.
What, if anything, did you do when you got off work that day? Now, this is, what day of the week is this?
It's a Thursday morning.
All right, so that, like, I think we established is like your Friday night, if you're working at 8 to 5.
Correct.
Monday through Friday.
Correct.
So what happens when you get off shift? Is there a gap, or does somebody come in and is there right away?
People are supposed to be there by 7.
Okay? What's your memory of October, the morning of Thursday, October 24th?
So before I left at 7, I pulled Randy into his office and just sat down and showed him the papers.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there.
Okay.
Who's Randy?
My direct supervisor,
And what kind of, based on your knowledge of Randy, what kind of training is he?
he's a pharmacist.
Okay. So he's one of the other pharmacists that works at Mount Carmel.
He was the operations manager, yes.
So he's above you.
Correct.
All right. What do you say to him?
I don't remember specifically. I can give you the gist.
Well, give us the gist of what you said to Randy.
That was a short meeting, but just that this is, I'm shocked, this is alarming, and the optics of this, no matter what's going on in there, the optics of this are not great.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the rest of the evening, I guess you could think on the drugs that were being used, and I could only think of 2 real cases in my head. That was that these were actually given to the patient, or someone is stealing drugs, and neither of which are really ideal.
All those other ones we've talked about before that you were, your name's on, either as a prospective review or a retrospective review. Did you know what procedure those were being used for?
At the time, no.
When you called Dr. Husel on Janet Kavanaugh about the extra zero, did he tell you what procedure he was using?
No.
Did you find out, when you talked to Randy, what procedure all those drugs we just went over were being used for?
Yes.
What procedure were those drugs being used for?
Palliative vent withdrawal.
And did that, in your mind, raise any concerns?
Yes,
Why?
because it doesn't look good.
Explain it to them. Why doesn't that look good?
It's a very large dose of medication at a palliative withdrawal, larger than it maybe needed to be, and it just, yeah, it didn't look good.
Okay? So you have two concerns, right?
Potential concerns, yes.
Two potential. Either it's more than it needs to be, is that right?
Right?
Or someone up there is stealing drugs.
Right.
That's also known as diversion in the hospital setting.
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
It's transition, I'll let him have it.
I'm sorry, I'll rephrase. Is that also known as diversion in the hospital setting?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So, why are you telling Randy, your supervisor, about your concerns?
Self-preservation,
What do you mean by that?
that's the irony of this whole situation, at least for me personally, is the real motive for me bringing this to Randy's attention was I didn't want to end up in a witness chair in a court of law.
All right? Why would you think you'd end up in a witness chair in the court of law?
I didn't think I would, just it was a possibility. And if you see something and you don't say something, you can be accused of being party to that something.
And the two somethings in this case was, somebody's really giving this to a
Objection, Your
patient?
Honor, leading.
It is leading, go ahead, rephrase.
And what are the two concerns you had in your mind, those two somethings that could end you up right there are?
Objection asked and answered.
I'll let him have it as a summary, go ahead.
That it was larger than it maybe needed to be, or someone was stealing drugs, also known as diversion.
Based on your conversation with Randy Miles, are you recommended to do anything?
Yes.
What, if anything, are you recommended to do?
He asked me to put in a voice report.
All right, I'm going to hear that term many times. Voice, is that just, has it said V-O-I-C-E?
It may be an acronym, I don't remember.
All right, what's a voice report?
It's was the hospital's internal incident reporting system. It was not specific to pharmacy or any one department. It was on Mount Carmel's intranet, the way that you reported anything.
Like what? Like you say anything, right?
Like an incident here, or if a patient received a wrong drug, or, sorry, my bias is sort of towards pharmacy examples, but it doesn't have to be anything egregious. Somebody slipped and fell in the hallway, like you could put in a voice report about it. It was just any sort of incident that you thought the hospital should be aware of, you could put in a voice report
Okay, had you ever put in a voice report before?
once.
All right. Well, did you put in a voice report?
I did not,
Why not?
because they aren't quick.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again.
They're not quick. Lots of questions, lots of type in the box. They take a long time.
Okay. So do you say anything to Randy about whether you're going to put in a voice report or not?
Yes, I told him I would do it when I got to work on Sunday night.
All right. Do you hear anything about it before you show up to work on Sunday night?
No, sir.
What happened, if anything, when you got to work on Sunday night? Did you find out anything about this voice report?
I don't remember if it was right when I showed up or not, but at some point on my first shift back the next week, I was informed that the voice report had already been done and I no longer had to do it.
Okay. And in your mind at this point, is there anything else you need to do regarding your concerns about the dosages and drugs given to Jack Timmons?
No.
You said that there was a see something, say something. Was that a policy you were taught or just a general principle?
Just a general principle.
Did you ever receive emails from your supervisors about dosages and drugs as part of the safety culture at Mount Carmel?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 20D.
Yep.
Okay, we good? Do you recognize 20D?
I do.
What is 20D?
An email from Josh Mush.
All right. Here's another name, Josh Mush. For the record, that is M-U-C-H.
I think it's SCH.
I was trying to guess. Here, let me find it here. All right, cool. I'll do that later. Does this appear to be a fair and accurate copy of that?
Appears to be yes.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Any objections?
No.
Okay. What is the date? And I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I think I can get the whole thing here. That's the wrong way. Okay.
Whoa,
Too much? All right. Zoom out.
felt like it was an oncoming car.
Zoom out. All right. Judge, can you ask if everyone can see that?
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So up here at the 2 line, do you recognize the names that are in the 2 line?
I do.
Who are those people? Do you know what their jobs are?
Yes.
And what are their jobs at Mount Carmel?
They're all pharmacists.
Okay. And there it is, from Joshua Mush, M-U-S-C-H, right? And Josh Mush's job at Trinity, at Mount Carmel is?
He's a pharmacist too.
Okay. And what's the subject of this email?
High dose ketamine and fentanyl.
And what is the date of this?
June 14 of 18.
All right. And what's the subject?
High dose ketamine and fentanyl.
All right. We've talked about fentanyl. What's ketamine?
It's another controlled substance.
What is ketamine? And, Your Honor, for the record, to be clear, we are not asking his opinion to proffer anything regarding medical diagnosis and treatment as an expert. We're just asking his questions based on his training and experience as a pharmacist. So we're not proffering him in any way as
Okay,
an expert.
I don't think she has a problem with that concept, it's when you went a little further with it. So-
I get it. We just took the CDC thing out. I get it. All right. So what's ketamine? Just as a pharmacist, tell the folks what ketamine is.
Sedative,
Yeah?
controlled substance used for sedation.
Now, looking back, was ketamine one of those drugs that a nurse or somebody else up on the floor could push the override button for?
Not that I'm aware of.
So what's Josh asking y'all on this?
Should we just read it?
Well, it's up there, but documents don't speak for themselves. Reading that, what is he asking there?
Essentially, there have been some doses of these two medication, and wondering if anyone had any more information they could share with the rest of the staff.
All right. So his concern, I was wondering, there have been some recent ICU, 1 gram of ketamine? Is that a big dose of ketamine?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, is the lack of foundation, also just reading from the exhibit, but it's really a foundational question based on his experience.
Okay. Do you have experience with the administering of ketamine?
Administration, no.
So you've never filled a script for it?
No, no, not in that sense.
Well, I think administering. You don't, as a pharmacist, you put it into people?
No.
No, I don't mean that way. When I say administer, I mean honor a script or an order.
I have seen orders for ketamine, yes. I have verified orders for ketamine, yes.
I still don't think it gets you to where your question is. You might want to lay a little bit more foundation with it.
Okay. As part of your job at Mount Carmel, have you verified orders for ketamine before?
Yes.
Can you estimate how many times?
A dozen?
Okay. And based on that experience of maybe a dozen times, you kind of shrug your shoulders, that's why I say maybe. Is that an
Yeah,
estimate?
yeah, it goes.
Is 1 gram of ketamine, based on your experience, a big dose of ketamine?
It's on the higher end, yes.
Okay. And then 1 milligram of fentanyl. Is that the same thing? Is that the same size we were talking about in the orders?
1 milligram is 1,000 micrograms, same thing. Just different ways of saying it.
All right. So for someone like me that didn't do well in math or science, a microgram then is 1/1000th of a milligram.
Correct.
And the Pyxis, they have them in the microgram. They don't put them in milligram bottles.
Correct. What, you're talking about fentanyl?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And what's Josh asking y'all in this email 20D?
If anyone had more,
Asked and answered.
I asked what he was talking about, now I'm asking what he's asking them.
I'll permit it. Go ahead.
asking if anyone had any more information about the using these doses. I can't read it. Any more information about the use of these two drugs?
All right. And from what standpoint is he asking you these things?
Safety.
Okay. Do you remember getting this email back in June of 2018?
Yes?
Well, did you give Josh a call?
I did not.
Why not?
I didn't have any more information to share.
You had seen these doses from Dr. Husel?
Correct?
Had you seen these doses from anyone else?
Not in my experience.
Did you know who he was talking about when you saw this email?
Yes?
Okay, that's
Jackson,
speculation.
Seriously, speculation.
Strike the question and answer, ladies and gentlemen, disregard, rephrase.
Based on your training and experience, verifying orders in the ICU, was anyone besides Dr. Husel giving 1,000 or 1 milligram doses, 1,000 microgram, or equivalently, 1 milligram of fentanyl?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
He asked me to lay a foundation for the next question.
Yeah, okay, I'll give it to you, go ahead and answer.
Anyone else?
In my experience, no.
So, did you know who Josh was talking about?
Okay,
Objection as to speculation as to what
Sustained.
Josh is talking about.
Well, who did you think Josh was talking about?
that's a different question.
There we go, okay. You get there. Who did you think Josh was talking about?
Dr. Husel.
All right. You didn't respond to this?
I did not.
Let's talk about Dr. Husel and ketamine. I think you said ketamine can't get over with.
Correct. What, at the time, I don't know what it is now. At the time, it could not.
That's everything we're talking about is at the time. Did Dr. Husel ever call you about him not being able to get things out on override, him not being able to get ketamine out on override?
Yes.
Were you ever present when Greg Dressbaugh received a phone call from Dr. Husel about him not being able to get ketamine out on override?
Yes.
So yesterday it was said that doctors had no idea how the Pyxis machine worked. Dr. Husel, based on your conversations regarding the override function regarding ketamine, did it appear to you that he knew how the Pyxis machine worked and its override function?
Your Honor, objection as to speculation as to what Dr. Husel thought. The question is also compound.
Okay, overall, can you answer the question?
Can you ask it again, please?
based on Dr. Husel calling you and your awareness that he would call Greg Dressbach about his inability to override ketamine on the Pyxis, did it appear to you that Dr. Husel knew about the override function on Pyxis?
It appeared so, yes.
Just summarize and bring us back to where we were in this tale. You put in your voice report, or the voice report's been put in, right? You're out. Did your bits, you know. What happens next? What's the next thing you remember happens?
Nothing until it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, there was another case came up that Greg saw.
Were you present that night when Greg saw that?
Yes.
What happened with that? Just your observations of what you saw.
Greg sent an email to Randy.
Okay. What happened next?
Uh,
Do you remember the date of that?
Thanksgiving-ish, so it was,
So your report to Randy and the subsequent voice report was in October
Correct.
of 18. This is now Thanksgiving-ish in November.
yeah, a couple, 3 weeks later.
You were there with Greg, right? You become aware of another issue, and Greg, and that's Greg Dreschbach, sends an email.
Correct.
What happens next?
It was a day or two later, Greg sent another email because he saw another incident.
What happened next?
Next thing I remember, we got an email, everyone in the hospital got an email that Dr. Husel had lost privileges.
Was this unusual to get emails like this saying a doctor had lost privileges?
No.
So that, let's just say hypothetically a doctor quits. Do you get an email when a doctor quits, moves on to something else?
It would
like
just
that?
say that they no longer have privileges at the hospital.
And that's the email you got regarding
Correct.
Dr. Husel. What happens next? Do you remember the date of that?
Not specifically, no. Early December, but I don't remember the date.
What happens next?
The interview with Homicide was after that.
Yeah? What date was that?
December 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there.
Is there anything I could show you which would help refresh your recollection as to the specific date you interviewed with CPD Homicide?
Yes?
And would that be the summary of your interview with them?
Yes?
Do you have yours? Because I think I pulled mine out and not yours. The interview summary?
The CBD summary.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Right here. For purposes of refreshing your memory, it's just this, I guess we have to mark it.
Stipulate to the date.
Okay. Well, I don't want to do, okay. They'll stipulate that you were interviewed on Saturday, December 8th, 2018 at 12:25 p.m. Does that sound right?
It does.
So everybody's agreeing that's the date of the interview?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
That's a true fact then?
And where did it occur?
At Mount Carmel West.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again.
At Mount Carmel West.
And during this interview, what did you tell the police regarding your knowledge of the ordering habits, medication habits of Dr. Husel?
I don't remember.
Is there anything I can show you?
Yes, there is.
If I show you this summary?
Object to that, it's a summary. If you want to show them a transcript, if you have one, I have no objection to that.
Well, Judge, the witness can be refreshed with anything, and he said the summary would help
He
refresh his
said the
memory.
summary, you may show it to him.
Thank you. I suppose we should mark it.
Yes.
Call it Court's Exhibit 2.
Okay,
Okay. Does that help refresh your memory as to what you told CPD?
yes.
Okay, you gotta put that down.
Yeah, I got it. All right. Do you recall the word you used when describing the dose that you, regarding the dose of Timmons?
Big?
What about your state of mind? Do you remember giving a statement as to the state of mind that you were in when you saw that dose on Mr. Timmons?
Alarmed?
And do you remember why, did you remember why you told the police you reported this alarming dose?
Because I thought someone was stealing drugs.
Okay. And did you also talk about finding out for the first time what these doses were being used for?
Yes.
And what was the purported reason for these, what was the procedure that these drugs were being used for?
Palliative ventilation withdrawal.
Say that again.
Palliative vent withdrawal?
Palliative ventilation withdrawal is what he said. See, we got these plexiglass and they're like being in a bowl, okay? When you look that way to talk to them, I get a better hear of you because it bounces off that glass and comes over. So that's why she sometimes can't hear you depending upon which way you turn.
Understood.
And it's the same problem that people have throughout the room, okay? We just adjusting because of COVID, so
Okay.
be patient with it.
No,
okay?
no worries.
Go ahead.
And if these drugs had actually been used, in your mind, for palliative ventilation withdrawal, would that have been alarming?
It didn't look good.
Were you also interviewed by the pharmacy board investigators?
Yes.
Who is the pharmacy board?
They're the state body that licenses pharmacists in Ohio.
All right, and do they have investigators?
Yes.
Did a couple of them come to visit you sometime thereafter?
Yes.
All right, and did you have a chance to review your interview with them prior to today's testimony?
Yes.
All right, let's go through what you told the investigators. Do you remember?
Hold on. Counsel,
Yeah.
Continue on.
All right. Directing your attention to your interview with the pharmacy board investigators. Specifically, what, if anything, did you tell them about, and I've just been admonished, I keep referring to James Timmons as Jack Timmons. James Nick Timmons, the one you talked to Randy about. What, if anything, did you tell the investigators regarding where your voice report, where the voice report, because it's really Randy's voice report, right?
Whoever wrote it.
Yeah. The voice report regarding James Timmons, whether that was posted anywhere.
Yeah, it was printed off and hanging just in the hallway across from the break room in the pharmacy.
All right. Still directing your attention to what you told the pharmacy board investigators. What, if anything, did you say about Dr. Husel and his likes or dislikes for compliant patients?
That it appeared he liked compliant patients.
And what, if anything, did you say regarding how he got compliant patients?
That it appeared that patients on a ventilator are compliant patients.
Was there anything about their level of consciousness that you specifically told them?
Objection leading, Your Honor.
Well, I'd get the question out.
Let me rephrase. What, if anything, did you tell them about their level of consciousness on the ventilators?
You have to be sedated to be on a ventilator.
What, if anything, did you tell the pharmacy board regarding your knowledge of the existence of palliative order sets?
Your Honor, I'm going to
Okay,
object.
I lost, as soon as you turned around and walked away, I couldn't hear the end of your question.
What, if anything, did you tell during this interview with the pharmacy board regarding your knowledge of an order set for palliative withdrawals?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. First of all, I think the pharmacy board inquiry is now a relevance issue. But I think it's a relevant issue. It's also leading. There's other multiple problems with the line of questioning, I think.
Okay. Overruled. Can you answer the question? Of course, you don't remember it, right?
To be safe.
What, if anything, did you tell the pharmacy board regarding your knowledge of palliative order sets?
That if there was one, I wasn't aware of it.
What's an order set?
A pre-put together list, for lack of a better word, of things that are commonly used together. So it doesn't even have to be all drugs related. It could be, like oxygen orders or nutrition orders or other things you saw, but it was if you're doing this, these are the things that are commonly used when you do this, and the prescriber didn't have to pick anything. It was just provided as a shortcut, if you will. Like if you're doing this, this stuff is commonly used. You can it speeds up the order entry process for the prescriber.
And what did you tell the pharmacy board regarding your knowledge of the existence of one for palliative order?
If there was one, I didn't know about it.
Okay. What, if anything, did you tell the pharmacy board about why you did not confront Dr. Husel about his dosing practices?
Your Honor, can we object? Can we approach?
Sure. Okay, Mr. Zion.
All right. So, referring to your interview with the Pharmacy Board investigators, did you tell them anything about why you did not confront Dr. Husel?
Yes.
What did you tell them? What were your reasons?
That there weren't any real specific policies, guidelines, rules I could really lean on to enforce anything I might say anyway.
Like an order set?
Uh,
You just said policy
Staying.
rules or anything you could lean on, like an order set. I was suggesting,
Sustained, okay? Next question.
would an order set have been one of those policies that you could have leaned on?
Could have referenced it.
Okay. All right, referring again to your interview with
Okay.
the Pharmacy Board investigator.
I'm going to shorten this up a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about an interview over the next series of questions. So instead of us hearing that line repeatedly, let's move on to the direct questions.
Okay,
And if you change the subject matter, then we can tell them what subject you're talking about then.
very good. Did you have any, in your mind, any reasons why this happened? This
Yes.
whole thing with Dr. Husel?
Yes.
What were those reasons?
In my opinion,
Yeah.
it was,
I'm sorry, the question was, what did you tell them?
Well, I thought we just short-circuited all that. I thought that's what they were telling me.
I'm sorry, just what's the question pending?
Okay, I prefaced it instead of us going through hearing every time that this is before the board, the jury is to assume all these questions are based upon his discussions with the board.
Sorry. I didn't-
Okay.
I was paying-
I thought that would be the appropriate thing.
No, it's okay.
I didn't want to hear the same prefaced question the whole time. Proceed.
Go ahead and answer.
that the combination of being night shift, Pyxis overrides being somewhat lax and seemingly unmonitored, and only having one physician on at nights allowed something like this to happen.
So what changed on October 24th? Why are you
What
telling
year?
me miles on October 24th
What year?
of 2018?
Okay.
With James Timmons? With James Timmons? With James Timmons? What changed?
It was, if you think about you brought up Kavanaugh earlier, if you think about that as the 1,000 micrograms, and then I think there was Versed with that one too. That you think of that as like one unit, sure, 1,000 plus Versed. Then there was, with Timmons, it ended up being two of those, two separate units. It was 1,010 of Versed, and then 10 of Dilaudid and 10 more of Versed. So it was two, in my mind, two separate, I don't even know what the word is, two separate, not instances, but it appeared to be double what I had seen before. So that was the first thing. And then the pharmacy had been, sorry to confuse the situation, but bypassed altogether. We didn't, but for that phone call, I wouldn't have known, we, pharmacy, wouldn't have known it was going on at all.
Did you also find out about what procedure was now being alleged in this case, in these cases?
Yeah, later on that Thursday evening.
And it's your testimony, you didn't know what procedure was being, these doses were being formed when you called about Janet Kavanaugh or any of the other large doses?
Correct.
And the fact that it was a palliative withdrawal, was that part of what changed for you?
It's been asked and answered.
Okay, we'll move on. Did you also interview with Mount Carmel HR?
Yes.
And do you recall what date that was?
January 9th, maybe, thereabouts.
And did you answer questions regarding Dr. Husel's fentanyl and midazolam dosing practices?
Yes.
Have you ever been able to listen to a recording of that interview?
No.
Were you able to review notes that someone else took of your answers?
Yes.
Do all of those appear to be fair and accurate answers to your questions, or
Appears-
answers to the questions that they gave you?
Appeared to be yes.
At any point in there, do you say you knew prior to October 24th of 2018 what the procedure was?
No.
Who's Bo Chang?
He was, well, still is, I guess, was a pharmacist at Mount Carmel.
Okay. Do you recall an email from Mr. Chang on Friday, February 21st of 2018?
No.
If I were to show you State's Exhibit 20C, could I have you look at that and see if you recognize this document?
Sure. You said February,
Oh,
December.
this, oh,
Yes, yes, I've seen this before.
okay. Does that appear to be fair and accurate?
Appears to be yes.
You're a part of this email chain at the top?
Hold on,
Uh,
sorry. Thank you.
Are we good?
Waiting for your question.
Are you on this email chain on this email?
Yes.
For the record, the witness pointed out when I spoke, December 21st of 2018. Does this appear to be fair and accurate?
Appears to be yes.
All right. So what happens after you've talked to all these people? Did you still work at Mount Carmel after all of this?
No, I was put on leave middle of December. I don't remember the date.
Okay. How did that happen? Tell
Got
the
it.
folks about that.
I got a call from Janet Whitty, who was the chief pharmacy officer, maybe. I don't know. She was high up at Mount Carmel at the time in the pharmacy department. And she called me on Wednesday evening as I was getting to go into work and just said, "You don't have to go in today. You're on leave."
Were any reasons, did you understand any reasons of why you were on leave at that point?
Speculation only. I could guess, but she didn't tell me specifically.
Objection as
Okay, you don't know of any, direct. No one's informed you of any reasons, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. You didn't get any reasons? That's
Correct.
what you
Correct.
said. How long were you on leave?
Till July 11th of 19.
What happened in July, if anything? July 11th, 2019.
I was terminated.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's take our afternoon break. 15 minutes, it's close to 15 after 3. Remember the admonition? David, call us up. Have a great break, ladies and gentlemen. Just relax, hang tight, we're gone.
Sorry.
It's hard to know where to start.
Okay, let's hold on till. Okay, you ready there, Sam?
good right now, thank you.
Okay, where's Austin? Can someone help here? Where's the Austin records? I need the Austin exhibits. He asked me Austin. Can I get Kavanaugh? Those exhibits for Kavanaugh, can I give those to you? Please go here. This goes here.
Just 1 second, I can't do all this at once.
Okay, he had records about Austin. Yeah, he says he gave me everything.
The records are used for lying Austin.
It should be, in that sector, and not, let's look.
It might be used for Austin equals
No, that's Ryan Hayes. Let me, that should all be in there.
This is Charles, this is Brigner.
If it's not an indicted, if it's not one of the ones still in the indictment, we didn't run the Pixis reports for
No,
those.
but you did do an order for it.
This report, I did print them out.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, they're electronic.
No, I've ordered the.
No, I'm just trying to get your exhibits.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that's still there, so that should be up there. I don't have any loose things here, and I didn't put anything back in my phone.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not talking loud enough.
It's more on a normal day without the subcase, you would have no problem hearing you.
This is Larry
It's the
Brigner, this
tush bowl
is
part.
Kavanaugh.
And we've had to put this up because of COVID, so
Yeah, yeah,
it just makes life absolutely miserable.
all right. Okay.
Okay, so I don't have anything.
Is the mic
on-
working? Can if I
I
get
don't have
closer to the?
anything on Austin.
Okay. Bonnie Austin, look at the Bonnie Austin, maybe it's up there.
Understood.
Yeah, he showed something.
No.
And I have your whole stuff. You did, this was like, you did this, you had an exhibit for Austin.
I did, yes, you're right.
You can, this is my stack, it's all Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh.
I want to like move or go through your stuff.
Well, go through my stuff, yeah,
You can do
go
it.
through it.
No, I just saw a sticky note here, so like.
Charles.
It goes in this book.
It's
I didn't put it there.
obviously right where it needs to be. I mean, you know, you'll find it right where it's.
Bonnie Austin, I think, is just a one-page.
It is, it's an order sheet.
So it's long, I didn't stick anything back
There
in.
was an order form. I don't think it was a PICS issue. It was just the actual, it was either the MAR or the actual.
We can always print another one off too, super quick.
Okay, so,
Here's
so,
20C, which is Bo Chang thing, you want that up, since you wanted everything.
You're looking for Bonnie Austin's Pixis? No.
just whatever David used.
MAR.
For Bonnie on the 1 page mark.
Yeah. That was the records of the order.
Or the order.
Looks exactly like something.
Yeah, those aren't them.
Those are for Greg, at least that was my intention.
A fucking mess, all right.
Well, let's print a new one off.
Yeah, print,
Let's print a new one off.
Yeah, can you do that? That'd be great.
It would have been exhibit 10B. Where's the,
notes, these are my notes, my notes. Here is, this is page 2 of summary number 11, this is page 1, that goes back in my notes, this is the opening. Here are my stickers.
Going fucking crazy.
Did it fall somewhere?
I was looking like under desks. I didn't see anything.
You got it?
Kavanaugh.
Can you work on that, Taylor?
start like monitoring and stuff over.
Okay.
So just go to, if it's the orders, just go to fentanyl and her records. And it will be in
It's
there.
the, one page of the MAR.
Okay, can I get the charts on all the orders? So it's Kavanaugh,
And
Brigner.
here she is. And there's
Brigner.
11 of them. So those, it's not back in the book.
You know what, I bet it's in the book behind somebody else.
Okay, look through it, see if you can.
Yeah, but
I think, but I didn't put anything back in the book. I did not. I had it all scooped up and then she asked for it, so I just handed everything back to her.
Kavanaugh, Charles. Where's Charles?
I haven't been anywhere else.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think of is that my notepad fell, but like I didn't see anything, you know, it wasn't like a scatter.
Stop right here.
I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, we'll print another one.
You got it?
Nope, this is what you have, 24J.
That's what you're
Okay,
looking
It
for?
was with Timmons. This is all you had, right?
You just want to fix this one.
Well, no, did you
No.
have another sheet though with it? I thought you had an order
Yeah,
sheet.
we had an order sheet for her too.
Okay.
Because she's one of the indicted people.
That's, so I showed you, it was exhibit 10 something.
10B is what it should be.
Yeah.
No, well, yeah, because 10 is the records, 10A is her picture, and then 10B would have been the orders.
Okay, well, it's gonna take a second.
We'll get you there. We'll get you a copy out there, and we'll all just agree that that's the same thing. Because I don't know what happened to
It's
it.
gonna take a second.
We've got the document. Hold up, bring it on, get it out.
That's bananas.
Dave,
Yes, ma'am?
what were the, Dave was,
2310.
it's the last page, yeah. Of the order. Yeah, it was the last.
Ten was the med order.
That's the med order.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, not the medication.
Not the
or
right.
intensive record.
Right, so this is the med order that was 10.
Because that's the one that has his name on it. The med orders
Yes.
have their names on it, and they are.
Does not, correct.
It's somewhere. It's mixed in with all the other paperwork.
This is 10B, but what is
That's 10.
There's a one-page document. Yeah, I wrote it in there.
Yes.
Okay, guys, this is what we just reprinted. Oh, Diane, I believe that is exactly what we showed. It's just another copy from it.
Yep, this is it. You wanted Austin. Perspective. Austin. Yep. 11:10. Completed. Review.
Dave, you want to start gathering them? You back here, David? I got screens in front of me. No, David?
Says verified. Action type complete.
You went to talk to Susan. Let's relax for 1 second. I hear them giggling in the back, so I assume he's gathering them. They are a happy group, aren't they? I miss my home courtroom. Well, everything on the bench is where I want it. I don't have to look, and I don't have to deal with the screens over there. They're over here. You know, you used to home. Yeah, I don't have the glass in front. See, each courtroom can decide what they want up glass-wise. In mine, I don't have anything in the jury box. I don't have anything between counts or anything. I don't have anything in front of me, but the jury box is still encased because you're our biggest risk coming off the streets. So, because we had it up there when it first hit, and it was just being in an echo. Ready? We ready? Going once. Okay, David.
All rise. Please be seated.
Okay. I need to ask the jury something first there, Ms. Menashe, I'll let you get started. Monday, we have a particular witness coming in from out of town. Due to his employment, he has to get back that night. So I've got a couple options. We can go until we're done, but that violates my promise to you all. Okay? Or I can bring him back the next day, but on Zoom. Okay? And that's probably the option I'll go with. Okay, so, but the fact he's on Zoom, you have to treat him the same as when he was in the courtroom. Fair enough? Okay. Ms. Menashe?
Yes, Your Honor. Tom,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
gonna move around, but I'll always let you know where I'm going,
Okay.
okay? I wrote down, and always tell me if I'm wrong, but I wrote down that the purpose of telling Randy about the call from the nurse was that any sort of incident the hospital should be aware of, you reported.
Rephrase that, please.
Sure. You went to Randy about the call from the nurse, did you not?
I did, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And your testimony on direct was that you went to Randy, right? Because you felt that any sort of incident the hospital should know about, you should report to the chain of command.
No, not any sort of incident. This particular incident was the one I was referring to.
Okay? And this particular sort of incident was that you suspected someone might be stealing medication.
That was my first guess, yes.
And actually was also your guess, was it not, after you fully discussed your theory of diversion with Greg?
Did you say Ray?
Greg.
Greg, yes,
Still your theory that someone was stealing the meds.
correct.
And you were in fact asked about, were you not, as to why you hadn't confronted the nurse about stealing the meds. Do you remember being asked, well, did you ask the nurse about potentially stealing the meds?
I do not remember that.
And you remember, well, let me go back to the diversion. That's why you went to Randy's, because you thought someone was stealing meds, right?
It was a possibility, yes.
And that would be a problem.
Generally speaking, yes.
And you knew, did you not, while working at Mount Carmel during your employment there, that there had been prior issues with people stealing meds?
Not specifically, but yes.
It was something to be aware of, right?
Yes.
And you said it, and I know we're going to talk about it a lot, but Talon, your main job as a pharmacist is safety, is it not?
Yeah, I would say yes, that's accurate.
Safety for the patient,
Yes,
safety for the community as a whole.
yes,
So stealing meds, especially opioids, would be an issue to escalate.
yes.
I want to talk about issues that you didn't escalate. Let's go back back to the 5 patients that you talked about. First, we'll start with Larry Brigner. Do you remember being asked about that patient?
Yes,
You didn't tell Randy any issues that you had with Larry Brigner, correct?
correct.
And Randy's your supervisor.
Also correct.
Randy Miles.
Yes,
And let's go to Janet Kavanaugh. You didn't reach out to Randy, even just verbally, about any issues that you had with Janet Kavanaugh, correct?
correct.
We'll get back to the call that you made to Dr. Husel on that.
Okay,
But then we'll go down to Charles Longstreth. You didn't reach out to Randy about any issues that you had with patient Charles Longstreth, correct?
correct.
Let's then go to Bonnie Austin. Same thing with Bonnie. You didn't reach out to Randy Miles about any issue you had with respect to Bonnie Austin and Dr. Husel, correct?
Correct.
And also, let's just go, I think that we'll go to finally James Timmons. James Timmons, again, when you went to Randy, you didn't go to Randy because of Dr. Husel. You went to Randy because you thought someone was stealing meds.
That was one of the possibilities, yes.
Because as I wrote down, and always tell me if I'm wrong, Talon, but your testimony on direct was see something, say something. Right?
I did say that, yes.
I'm going to start at the end, kind of work backwards. You were asked on direct examination about what Dr. Husel told you during that call that you made to him regarding Janet Kavanaugh. And Tal, would you agree there's one call to Dr. Husel?
Yes,
You made one call to him.
correct.
In all of this universe, in your time there.
Objection, Your Honor. He wasn't
Sustained.
in all of that universe, wasn't involved in all of it.
Sustained.
Okay, this universe is these 5 patients. With respect to the patients that you've been asked about, Talon, you made one call to Dr. Husel?
Correct.
But wouldn't you agree that outside of those 5 patients that we've asked you about, there were other times that you called Dr. Husel, for instance, about antibiotic issues?
Yes, I had spoken to him on other occasions.
And you call him, talk to him about medication interaction regarding antibiotics. Does that sound familiar?
I don't remember specifically, but I know I've called about antibiotics before, yes.
And tell the jurors how that works. What's the link system? Is it SpectraLink?
It's a phone.
Okay.
It's a phone.
And did you have a direct dial to Dr. Husel, or would you call the ICU?
I would call the ICU.
And you were able, in those times when you called about antibiotics or other things outside of these 5 patients, to get a hold of Dr. Husel?
Yes,
Talk to him, resolve the issue, you hang up the phone.
yes.
Which brings me to another question. Mr. Zion asked you a lot of times about, did you know of any other doctors that used fentanyl in these amounts? But Talon, wouldn't you agree with me that you worked in the night shift?
I agree.
Only the night shift.
I agree.
And by your own testimony, the only doctor in the ICU in the night shift was Husel.
On the nights he worked, that is correct.
And you worked, was it Sunday through Thursday?
Yeah. Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
And so Friday, Saturday, you're off,
Correct.
and then you come back in and you work those night shifts.
Correct.
So your experience with other people using doses of fentanyl is during the night shift?
Correct.
You never worked days at Mount Carmel?
Outside of training that I mentioned earlier, the first few weeks, months, no, I was hired as a night shift pharmacist.
So going back to this conversation that you had with Dr. Husel about Janet Kavanaugh, I think think your testimony was today that he told you that the medication was for a procedure.
Correct.
Yet you were just asked by Mr. Zion if you had reviewed the notes from your HR interview in advance of today.
Correct.
And he asked you, based on that review, did you find the notes to that interview to be accurate? Do you remember that question?
No, I do not specifically.
Did you review the HR notes of your interview with them in advance of your testimony?
One set, yes.
And based on your review, did those appear to be a fair summary of what you told to Human Resources in the Mount Carmel West?
Appeared to be, yes.
So I want to just go over that with you. Isn't it true that in your HR interview, you indicated to HR, as evidenced by the HR notes, that you only recall talking to Dr. Husel one time? Dr. Husel responded with, quote, "No, this is for a palliative withdrawal," end quote. Remember that?
Yes.
So then he told you during the first call about the palliative withdrawal.
He did not.
So then the HR notes are wrong?
Yes,
Those are wrong.
they are.
Let me ask you if your deposition testimony about this is also wrong. Do you remember when you were deposed in a civil case?
I do.
Okay, let's have a little conference. Ladies and gentlemen, get to know each other.
Before we get to that question,
Okay?
circling back to other doctors that worked in the ICU at night when you were there.
Mhm.
The only other doctor other than Dr. Husel that worked the night shift at ICU was Dr. Haggis, correct?
Regularly, yes.
And you know, based on your experience with Dr. Haggis and his work in the ICU, that he actually, as a matter of practice, didn't use fentanyl.
I don't know.
Do you ever remember a script coming through for fentanyl at all with Dr. Haggis?
Specifically, I do not.
So the only person you ever remember ordering fentanyl, putting in an order for fentanyl, is Dr. Husel from the ICU.
Yes.
Okay. And it's an important detail, though, Talon, because you were asked the question when compared to other doctors. But really, based on your memory today, there's only one doctor that you can remember prescribing, ordering fentanyl from ICU?
I've seen lots of orders. Some have been less memorable than others.
So from ICU, you've seen lots of orders of fentanyl
I've seen lots of orders, period.
in your time at Mount Carmel?
Yes.
Commonly used drug, then?
You could say that. I was referencing to orders, period, though. Orders for metoprolol, I mean, just orders. You see a lot of them.
You were just referencing orders of drugs, period?
Answering your question, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is the same true of lots of orders for fentanyl?
Lots is non-specific.
Right, so let's be specific. What does lots mean to you, Tom?
I don't know.
More than 5, less than 10, more than 20, more than 10?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know.
So getting back to this issue about when and if you were told by Dr. Husel that the 1,000 with respect to Janet Kavanaugh was for a palliative extubation, do you remember in your December 8th, 2018 interview telling Detective Kroom specifically, I know I talked to him once about it, and it was never a, hey, look out, a warning of any kind. It was just inquiring. Because that seems a little high, you sure put it right, yeah. And then after talking to Greg, he says that was just a normal dose, right? Do you remember telling Detective Kroom that?
I don't specifically know.
Do you remember then telling Detective Kroom that during that one phone call, Dr. Husel told you that we were palliatively extubating?
I do not.
Tell me something, Talon, and this is more of a common sense question than it is a pharmacy question. Do you think memory gets better with time?
I do not.
And so the interview with CPD, Columbus Police Department, was on December 8th of 2018. Was that the first interview that you ever gave with respect to this case?
I don't recall specifically.
You would agree with me that the HR interview was December 9th? We've stipulated to that date?
No, I think it was January 9th.
Okay. After your CPD interview?
Correct.
And then even after those two interviews was your interview with the pharmacy board, right?
Correct.
So if memory doesn't get better with time, can we presume that your memory during the CPD interview was better than it was during those other interviews?
Yes.
Just gonna bring up some issues. Ketamine. Fair to say that every patient you were asked about on direct, Brigner, Kavanaugh, Longstreth, Bonnie, Austin, and Timmons, none of those cases involved ketamine.
I don't know.
Do you remember showing the exhibits about and being asked about the fentanyl orders?
I do, yes.
Do you remember being asked about the Percet
I do, yes.
and the Dilaudid?
Yes.
Do you remember being asked any questions on direct examination about any ketamine orders that were associated with those 5 patients?
I do not, no ma'am.
And ketamine was a drug that Mount Carmel West, someone within, had made a decision that you could not override.
At the time, yes.
And so I asked that because that was possible, right? To tell the Pyxis machine, doesn't matter what anyone does, don't let the med out. Right?
Without prior pharmacist verification, yes.
Without you doing your job in the basement or on the first floor, there was a way, when necessary, to tell the machine, don't open that drawer.
Correct.
But that wasn't true of fentanyl.
Correct.
Even after you were shown this email showing the witness has previously been marked as State's Exhibit 20D. Kyle, do you remember being shown this?
Yes.
This email is marked June 14, 2018. Does that look accurate?
It does?
Even after June 14, 2018, the Pyxis system is still not changed, right, with respect to fentanyl and not being able to overwrite.
Correct.
And after June 14, 2018, let's see here. We've got Troy Allison, McClung, and Austin and Timmons are the patients that you testified to earlier. That post-date that email. Would you agree with me on that?
Austin and Timmons, yes.
Okay. Also, you were asked about the contents of this email, and I just want to make sure that I'm seeing it as you do, which is, It doesn't say ICU night, does it?
It does not.
So that ICU is 24 hours. It's open 24 hours, right?
Yes.
And other than the night shift, tell the jurors what other shifts there are.
Days and evenings.
So there's 3 shifts.
Correct.
And it doesn't say days or evenings either, right? It just says recent ICU orders.
From some ICU providers, yep.
Would you also agree with me, Talon, that in between ketamine and fentanyl is the word "and"?
Yes.
And then ICU appears again in that email?
Yes.
You'd agree it doesn't say day, night, just says ICU, right?
Yes.
You would also agree, and take your time if you need, that there's nowhere in that entire email that it ever says Dr. Husel.
Yes, I agree.
But it does say in that second sentence right there, some colleagues have raised concern about this practice. You see that?
I do.
We know that's not, you weren't one of those colleagues.
Correct?
We also know that after that email came Bonnie Austin. You didn't make a call based on that email with respect to Bonnie Austin, did you?
No, ma'am.
And James Timmons you called because of diversion.
As one possibility, yes, ma'am.
Sorry, one thing I left out. First sentence there of that email. Ketamine and 1 milligram of fentanyl from some ICU. What's the word that follows ICU?
Providers.
Would you agree with me that that's written in that email by Josh as plural?
Yes.
More than one?
Plural, yes. Excuse me.
I want to talk about Randy a little bit. Something that wasn't asked about was Randy's availability or lack thereof when you were on the night shift. It is something, though, that you talked about with detectives during your police interview. Would you agree with me on that?
I would.
Because you were asked, like, why didn't you go right to Randy or why didn't you call Randy? Do you remember those questions?
I do.
And you said that based on your experience, Randy, who was your supervisor, was generally not available at night.
Yep, generally not available.
Like, do you remember Talon giving this example with respect to the Lipiodol?
Lepiodol, yes, ma'am.
Lipiodol. Stick to lawyer. Lipiodol. In fact, there was an instance, was there not, and you told the detectives about this, that a doctor had placed an order for Lipiodol, and it had been rejected. Is that right?
No, it is not.
It had not been pushed through?
No, that was not what I was talking about in that regard.
You're right. I'll rephrase. You didn't know where to find it.
That is correct.
Third time's the charm for me. You didn't know where to find the drug downstairs in pharmacy.
Yes, the physical drug. This surgeon had requested this drug. I don't remember if there was an order, if it was a phone call or whatever, but he was in an emergent OR and needed this particular drug, and we didn't know where the physical drug resided in the room.
And I remember you telling the detectives that you didn't know where the drug was because at that point in time, he was the only doctor that you had known to ever use that particular drug.
I don't remember knowing that at the time. I may have found that out in the morning when Brandy showed up.
Okay, so, and it wasn't unusual that a doctor then would call down there and say, I need this drug,
Correct.
because that happens.
It does happen, yes.
So the fact that Dr. Husel, as you testified, called down there about ketamine, you got calls from doctors, that's what you do, right? Is get calls from doctors that need something.
Yeah, we got calls from doctors.
And so going back to this incident about you couldn't find the drug, you called Randy?
Mm-hmm.
Randy's MIA.
Yeah, no answer. And I guess let me clarify. One of us called Randy. I don't remember if it was me or Greg, but one of us on nights called Randy.
And so then Randy comes into work generally at 7 a.m.
Roundabout, yep.
And so with respect to this situation, the medication, Randy comes in at 7 and then he's like, oh,
Yes, he said that we keep this special for this doc, and it was over here. We had found it subsequently, and in time, Greg actually found it, rooting through the pharmacy. He had located the drug, so it ended up resolving. But yeah, we didn't talk to Randy at all until he came in the following morning.
Yeah, and I say this because you told the detectives this story as an example as to why you didn't go to Randy with respect to the questionable diversion, right? You didn't go to him until the next morning.
Correct.
Because he wasn't that responsive, right?
Right.
And was he your only supervisor?
It's kind of, I don't know. There was the director of pharmacy who, I guess I say supervisor is like the person that gave you your performance review. The director of pharmacy did them for some people. Randy was the operations manager. He did them for some people. Randy was my person. He gave my review. But the director, if memory serves, was one that did Greg's reviews. Why they were divvied up that way, I don't know. But there were more than one person in management, but Randy was my point guy.
And just so we're clear, any other person in management, you didn't call them either about these 5 patients you just testified about?
Correct.
And you were mentioned, I want to go back to the diversion call. You mentioned on direct that you called because you didn't want to be in a witness chair like you're here today.
Yes.
But again, there was no prior call before that diversion call, right?
Correct.
Let's talk about Timmons. I listened a lot during their direct, where Mr. Zion would repeatedly say, "Where was pharmacy?" Do you remember that
I do.
repetition? And it was kind of a question that's like, obviously pharmacy's in the basement, right? It's on the first floor. But it was a question, would you agree, that was like, where was pharmacy, right? Where were you when these things were happening? I want to talk to you about where you physically were before the records that you were shown. Talk to me about codes. When there's a code in ICU, do you go up?
One of us did, yes.
Okay. And one of you would be you or Greg on the night shift. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
It's a joint exhibit, so it's a document we both have. It's the code.
As far as it's James Timmons, so thank you for that question.
So we'll get back to questions. Code. Tell the jurors what a code is.
Code blue is when someone's heartbeat stops, and you know the code blue, and maybe you've seen it on TV, and they run to get the paddles and do all that, and CPR has started to resuscitate someone whose heart has stopped.
And when someone, let's just say, hypothetically, in ICU at night, calls for, you get a code, that would be Dr. Husel, because it was a night shift, right?
If it was a night he was working, yes.
I want to show you what's been marked, and you've already been shown the State's Exhibit 11B, just generally to orient you in time. You were asked about this fentanyl order. And we'll get back to it, but would you agree with me that in State's Exhibit 11B that the fentanyl was ordered around 3 a.m.?
Agree, yes.
Okay, and the fentanyl dosage is what?
1,000 micrograms.
Okay, this is James Timmons.
Okay,
correct?
yes,
Let's talk about before 3 a.m. Do you remember pharmacy being up on the 4th floor in ICU for a code with James Timmons?
I do not, no ma'am.
Showing the witness what's previously been marked as Joint Exhibit 11, page 546. Your Honor, we're using white stickers for joints. Then just generally, Talon, does this sheet look familiar to you?
Generally, yes.
Okay, and tell the jury rather, generally what is this sheet?
Generally, this is code notes. So that code blue, that event where everyone went up to one of the people's job, usually I think it was a nurse, would just document everything that happened and when it happened. So 2308, I don't know what A means, but you can see the time over here, and then what happened then or what was going on then follows.
And tell me, Talon, is this your signature right here?
Yes.
Okay, where it says RPH?
Yes.
Right. And if we could go back up to the date with respect to this, the date is 10/22/18. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And the time event recognized says 2308. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
And this is during the 2308 falls within the night shift, does it not?
It does.
Okay. What does it say, events prior to recitation, additional information?
Physician RNs at bedside, patient in VFib with pulse, defibrillated twice, 3 amps of bicarb, 1 amp of epi, patient went into VFib without a pulse, code called.
And you would agree with me, it says physician RNs at bedside?
Yes.
What does it say under physician signature? If you can read, I'm happy to scroll it.
I see it down there.
Okay. What does it say?
Bottom left down there,
Uh-huh.
it appears to say William Husel.
So just so I'm understanding this right, on 10/22/18, so before State's Exhibit 11B, before Dr. Husel is ordering fentanyl for this patient, he's actually saving this patient's life,
I would agree.
right? And you know what? Where's pharmacy? You're in the room with William Husel, right?
Yes.
Because isn't it true, Talon, that when there's a code switch, William is there in the back of the room telling all of you what to do. Put the tube in, do this, and you're mixing the cocktail. I don't know if that's not the appropriate word, but you get where I'm going, right?
Right.
And it's a cardiac arrest situation, so someone is actively dying, right?
Right.
So the man that sits here is the man that actually saved Mr. Timmons 2 days before giving him fentanyl.
I agree.
Wouldn't have needed the fentanyl if Timmons had died, right? Right?
Stands to reason. Stands to reason.
And those code situations, Talon, that's not the only time you ever coded with Dr. Husel, was it?
I don't remember specifics, no, but I was on more than one code with Dr. Husel, yes.
And every code is to save a life.
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as another code sheet. This is jail capital. This is the record with respect to the code. Showing you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit JK 1.2. Talon, just generally, do you recognize this type of medical record?
Generally, yes.
And fair to say a medical record that is, that you might see when you're reviewing like a patient file, for instance?
Yes.
If you could, down here, I'm going to get this straight. The second sentence, it reads, does it not, critical care physician and ICU code blue team responded?
Mm-hmm.
Showing you now what's been marked as defense exhibit JK 1.1. You know what, Talon? I'm going to make sure that you ID whose record this is.
Janet Kavanaugh.
This appears to be Janet Kavanaugh's record. Showing you now what's defendant's exhibit JK 1.1. Whose record does this appear to be?
Janet Kavanaugh.
And again, Talon, for the jury, what does this type of sheet involve? What is this?
This is the code notes. I'm just making sure. Yeah, resuscitation record. Code notes.
And again, the patient name's Janet Kavanaugh on this.
Mm-hmm.
So it appears that Janet Kavanaugh was also a code situation. Correct?
Correct.
And would you agree with me that up top it says who intubated and it says Dr. Husel?
I agree.
And would you agree with me that it says time event recognized was 0247?
Yes.
And we know 0247 is during the night shift.
2:47 in the morning, yep.
And we know from the prior record I showed you that the critical care physician and ICU code blue team responded to the code, right?
Right.
So, once again, we have William Husel saving a life before the fentanyl script. Right?
It appears to be, yes.
And just so we're clear,
Whose signature is that? I'm sorry, on that one?
oh, I'm sorry, Talon, is that your signature right down there?
It is.
Okay,
Physician's signature, that's what I was asking about,
Right.
the physician, that doesn't look like.
okay,
a
but it's not your line of questioning. You'll have,
Oh, okay, well, I'm objecting then.
Okay. Well, Talon,
Objection, Your Honor.
objection what?
Sustained, no,
Thank you.
not sustained, overruled.
Oh,
You get your chance.
This right here, is that your signature where my finger is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And again, 2:47 a.m. Would be the night shift?
Yes.
And we know there's only, when you work, right? The only ICU doctor, when William Husel is there and you're there at night, he's the only ICU doctor, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And just so we're clear, I want to make sure that the jury is tracking these dates. In case...
Okay, counsel, let's go to questions,
Sure.
not your
In
desires.
In case the line of questioning comes up that maybe this wasn't associated with Dr. Husel, 247 on, would you agree with me, Talon, the date is 12/1?
12:11?
12/11.
Yes.
Showing you what's previously been marked as State's Exhibit 29BB. Do you recognize this? You were asked about, in particular, this fentanyl order right here.
Yes.
What date does that appear on?
12:11.
So, and the date as to when that came in, when the order was placed, is what?
12:11.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, 12:11.
Oh, I'm sorry, not the date, the time.
Action details, turn time, order. It appears to be 5:10 in the morning.
Yes, and would you agree that 5:10 in the morning is still the night shift?
Yes.
And Dr. Husel is ordering the fentanyl at 5:10 a.m.?
Yes.
And at 47, her life was saved.
Yes.
Her being Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh.
Were there residents that worked in the ICU at the night shift, if you recall, Talon?
I recall seeing resident physicians in the ICU. I don't know where they were stationed or whatever.
Okay, and did you have personal relationships with them or no? Like,
No, not really.
also now talk to you a little bit more about State's Exhibit. One moment. Sorry. State's Exhibit 29BB. I just showed you this, but I want to go back to it if we could. 510. It appears that the order was placed for fentanyl.
Correct.
And you were asked, showing the witness State's Exhibit 29B, you were asked on direct about your review of that order. Do you remember that?
I do.
This is Janet Kavanaugh.
Right.
And did you have an opportunity to review that order
Yes.
based on the record?
It appears so, yes.
And your review and your verify was at what time?
5:14.
Okay. And what time does it show that the action was complete?
8:27.
So 3+ hours expired between you hitting verify and the order being completed.
It appears so, yes.
Which takes me to this other word that's used throughout. When it comes in the order. Do you remember how the word routine is included in the order notes?
I do.
Showing you 29B again, State's Exhibit. Like, for instance, this right here, again, Janet Kavanaugh, order details, 1,000, push, inject, once, routine.
Right.
What's another way? There's a way to escalate things with a different word than routine, right?
Yes.
What's that word?
Stat.
Stat.
Stat order is one that needs to be completed quicker.
And in none of the records that you were shown on direct did the order notes ever include the word stat, right?
Correct.
Always included just the word routine.
Yes.
Also, with respect to the push, I remember you using the word rapid, but the push is 3 to 5 minutes. You testified to that as well on direct, right?
That's what it says, yes.
Yes, that's what it says, right? It says
Correct.
over 3 to 5 minutes, right, versus titrating,
Correct.
like a drip.
Like a drip, yes.
Okay. Okay. You would agree with me. And what is palliative extubation? Based on your experience and training?
It is the withdrawal of the breathing tube, the ventilator, and the alleviating of discomfort.
Discomfort and suffering?
Sure.
And just as a general principle, during palliative extubations, is it important if you know, right, that if someone passes, the family doesn't have to have them pass like while they're vented,
I don't know.
like without the tubes,
I don't know.
okay? What are vasopressors? Because that's a word that's also been used. But based on your training and experience, what are vasopressors?
Vasopressors are drugs that, I guess for lack of a better word, artificially keep your heart beating. So when your heart is beating too slow or too weak to adequately circulate blood to all your vital organs, it can kill you. Your heart's not working right. So we have drugs that we can give that makes your heart beat faster, makes your heart beat stronger, so that proper organ perfusion or blood can get to the organs where it needs to be, even when your heart's not working quite as strongly as it should be.
So if I was on them, they could help me live, help me breathe.
Help you live, sure.
Okay, right, help me live, because I'm not breathing, actually, right. I want to go back to State's Exhibit 29BB. Again, Janet Kavanaugh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we remember from the list of patients that Janet is the first of the 5, right, Tom?
The first that was.
Of the 5.
Yes, yes.
And I'm trying not to jump back and around, but I will just for this, because the question is really when you found out.
Okay, are you showing it to the witness?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, I usually don't face the jury, actually. When you made the call to William about the Janet Kavanaugh, whether you knew it was a palliative extubation or not, showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 29BB, would you agree with me under the fentanyl order information, right there? What does it say?
To be given for palliative extubation.
And we know, based on your prior testimony, that Janet, 29B, is an order that you verified and approved almost 3 hours before it was completed, right?
According to that document, yes, ma'am.
And when you get an order in your queue, I'm assuming that you look at this information, you look at the MAR?
No, this wasn't even put in until 5:45.
I'm sorry, this right here, to be given for palliative extubation?
Yeah, I read this as admin date time, at the very top, 5:45 EST.
Tell me which section you read when you get it.
You don't have to read this at all before order verification.
Well, in your job as a pharmacist, I would assume it would be important to know why medications are being ordered, because isn't that part of determining whether they're appropriate?
It is, yes, ma'am.
So if the notes didn't indicate why something was ordered, you can always call,
Correct,
which you did on Kavanaugh,
correct,
and you spoke with Mr. Husel.
correct.
Where are those vials?
Which facts? Oh, vials.
Felt like during your direct exam, these vials were put up here, I don't know, even like they were, I'll leave that for the jury. But these vials, would you agree with me, Talon, in and of themselves, there's certainly nothing illegal about these, right? I mean, these were in the Pyxis machine,
Right,
right?
right.
And sometimes there's 100 microgram vials, and as we've seen from some of the orders, there can be 200 microgram vials.
There may be, the order that I saw earlier was a 20 mil vial. It's like a big one that we use to make IVs with. If it was, those weren't routinely in Pyxis. So that, I mean, it's a, like I said, it's not really, if it was pulled out of Pyxis, it was one of those.
Okay, so if I order, I'm a doctor in the ICU, and I order a certain number and multiple vials come out, at some point, right, there's a tech that comes around the floor and refills the Pyxis machine, correct?
Correct.
And that happens every single day, does it not, in the ICU?
I think it happens every day, period. Yes.
Every day, period, in that hospital, right? So if I take out 20, a tech comes around and refills the Pyxis.
Correct.
This is standard operating procedure, right?
Correct.
And there's 3 different Pyxis machines, or rather there were 3 different ones in the ICU floor at the relevant time frame.
To best I can remember, yes, ma'am.
Station 1, 2, and 3, right?
Right.
And a tech oversees and refills any one of the 3 as necessary.
It's not as necessary. Best I can recall, a report will print once or twice a day, and then the tech in the pharmacy sees what's needed and where it's needed, and then goes up once or twice a day and refills it.
So they take all the meds up with them, right, based on this report that's generated.
Correct.
So every time there was a withdrawal of, let's just say, 1,000 for Janet, or 1,000 for Timmons, the tech or the pharmacy would have also gotten a report to know that the machine had to be refilled.
To my knowledge, yes, ma'am.
So it's another means of communication that the pharmacy is getting about how much fentanyl was being used.
Yes.
He said
Yes.
I know we talked about, I want to talk some more about Janet Kavanaugh if we can.
Okay.
State's Exhibit 29BB. Fair to say, town, this is the same sheet again where this 12/11/17 fentanyl order is placed.
Yeah.
Does it look familiar?
Yeah, looks familiar.
And I know that the state asked you about these meds down here, this fentanyl. I want to talk to you about these 3 meds up here.
Okay.
First med. What does that order appear to be?
Calcium gluconate.
Tell jurors what that does.
It's calcium. Honestly, it's been so long, I don't recall exactly what they used it for.
Okay? So you wouldn't know that it's actually something that helps prevent cardiac arrest.
I probably would have then, right? You just asked. Right now, I do not.
Okay. What about the next order, medication, the sodium?
Sodium bicarbonate.
What does that do?
It is very basic. So if your body is acidotic or your pH is too acidic, sodium bicarb can make it more basic. So it in this case, it was, well, I don't know. I won't say that.
So it can correct acidosis, right?
Correct. What help? Yeah.
Which could help increase someone's chances of living.
Yes.
And then finally, I want to go to this 3rd medicine. Tell the jurors what that is right there, the 3rd, at 438.
Hydrocortisone. It's a steroid.
And what does that do?
I don't recall.
Does it increase your blood pressure and help the vasopressors work better?
I don't recall.
You don't recall.
Correct.
But at least the one medicine, the sodium bicarbonate, you do recall.
Sure.
And it's a life-saving measure, right?
Yes.
And that was at 431. Who's the doctor that ordered that medicine?
Dr. William Husel.
So before he's ordering the fentanyl at 510, he's ordering a life-saving drug.
Would appear, yes, ma'am.
And we know that Janet had a cardiac arrest earlier,
Yes.
in which she was saved by Dr. Husel.
Yep, we saw that.
It's a lot of notes, one moment. Let's talk about Bonnie Austin, or Brandy McDonald,
Okay.
okay?
reason why I want to talk about Brandy McDonald was because you were asked a lot of questions about overrides. Remember that?
I do.
And I really want to be clear about something. Let's say an override is the buttons pushed. I'm a nurse and I push the button. Okay?
Okay.
The override button. Helen, you would agree, would you not, that you do not know that that override button has been pushed until and unless you are in the basement, haven't reviewed it, and it comes through as a completed order?
Under normal circumstances, correct.
Okay. So I want to be clear about this. If I'm a nurse and I hit override, you aren't live tracking overrides, right?
Correct.
In fact, you've been asked during the course of this investigation about whether you did that, and you said that's not your job, right?
Live tracking overrides, correct.
Right? That's not your job. So you get the order, and if you review it before it's been completed, you don't know if it's an override or not.
Say that again.
I hit override.
Yep, yeah, I got that.
Comes down to, because overrides still go to the basement, right?
Once the order is placed for the med, yes.
Right. So order's placed, okay? I hit override because I want to get the medicine from the cabinet.
Okay.
Without your okay, right?
Right.
But it goes to you as an order, and the only way you know if it's an override is if it comes to you as a completed order.
Yes, under normal circumstances, I agree with that.
Right, so you could be approving overrides without even knowing it.
Yes.
So the implication that somehow an override is nefarious or a way to circumvent the pharmacist, you'd agree that it still comes to you.
After the fact, yes.
Not after the fact. You just agreed that if I hit override, I place the order, I hit override, it goes down, right? It goes down to the basement, it comes to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. I'm just trying to follow along here, yep.
The only way you know that it's a retrospective review is if it comes to your queue as completed, correct?
Yes, I think so.
So you're not live tracking when the drawers are opened or when they're not.
Right? Right.
Okay, and you don't have this information from the Pyxis machine in real time, correct?
Regularly, no.
Okay. So I know I said I was going to ask you about Brandy McDonald, but sometimes things change. I want to go back to Mr. Timmons. Give me a chance here, 1 second. Maybe it is Brandy McDonald. 1 second, Your Honor. Sorry. Where's the one? Just like that. Back to Brandy McDonald.
Which one are we on now? I'm sorry.
State's Exhibit 24E.
Brandy McDonald?
Yes,
Okay.
Brandy McDonald. Using this more to just as a general discussion point about overrides.
Okay.
This column right here, these sheets, State's Exhibit 24E, these are override. It says override, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's say this is page 1 of, and the patient name for identification.
appears to be?
Brandy McDonald.
Okay. So that's page 1. Page 2. Would you agree, continuing on page 2, that the last column is for overrides?
Yes.
Okay. Just as a general example, how does it appear to be yes in a number of those instances?
It does.
Okay. And you were asked about how many times you get an override, and you said to the prosecutor it wasn't common. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And he asked you, is it like once a day or once a week, and you weren't sure?
Sure.
But it's possible from your prior testimony that you didn't know about the frequency of overrides because you're not live tracking them.
Possible, yes.
Because we know, do we not, from State's Exhibit 24E, that even on page 2 of Brandy McDonald, how many yeses do you see there?
8.
Okay. 8 of 9?
Correct.
And then, let's go to page 3. Do there appear to be, Talon, more yeses on page 3 in terms of overrides?
Yes.
And I'm just curious, 1357, directing your attention to this right here, this override. What, 1357, that's 1:57 p.m., right?
Correct.
So William Husel, that's not a night shift.
That is not a night shift.
So during the day, things are being overridden. Again, 18:49, override,
Yes.
and then overrides on the next page, correct?
Correct.
So certainly with respect to Brandy McDonald, overrides seem to be not unique.
Correct.
I'm going to go to James Timmons now, what's previously been marked as State's Exhibit 24K. Same line of questioning with respect to James Timmons, and if you could identify for the record, who does this record appear to belong to?
Appears to belong to James Timmons.
And same type of thing, as the last column indicates overrides?
It appears so, yes.
So that's page 1. Page 2, do there appear to be overrides?
Yes.
Page 3, do there appear to be overrides?
Yes.
Page 4, do there appear to be overrides?
Yes.
Page 5, do there appear to be overrides?
Yes.
Page 6, do there appear to be overrides?
Yes.
Page 7, there are overrides there?
Yes.
Page 8?
No.
Page 9, overrides there?
Yes.
Page 10, overrides there?
Yes.
And finally, page 11, overrides there?
Yes.
So similar to Ms. McDonald, with respect to Mr. Timmons, overrides do not seem to be unique.
Appears to be yes.
And just so we're clear, night shift starts at what time?
I got there at 2100, 9 o'clock. Second shift leaves at 11, 2300.
So just as an example, on page 3 of State's Exhibit 24K, this override that I'm pointing to, 2054 would be like 8:54 p.m.?
Yes.
You were asked questions about side effects, medication. I think I want to go back if we can. Well, I guess we don't have to go back. You work at Walgreens currently, right?
Yes.
And you worked there before your employment at Mount Carmel?
Yes.
And there was this distinction made about retail pharmacy versus clinical pharmacy, but fair to say, Talon, that when you took the job at Mount Carmel, there wasn't special training for a clinical pharmacist, correct?
Outside of on the job, the first few months or whatever, correct.
And that's a great point. Let's talk about, as a pharmacist, ways that you learn. Would you agree with me that you learned from your education?
Yes,
Your doctorate took you 4 years to get?
correct.
You learned from your on-the-job experience?
Yes,
And then you can also learn from literature, research, that type of thing.
yes,
Those 3 ways are how you learn. So you were asked about side effects, and specifically with fentanyl and respiratory depression. Do you remember that?
I do.
I want to just kind of take it to a retail pharmacy situation. I come through the drive-through. I'm there to pick up my order, and I'm advised by the pharmacist or the tech that the medication I'm getting might have certain side effects. That commonly happens, correct?
Correct.
You would agree, would you not, that just because I'm told of a potential side effect doesn't mean that I'm going to experience that?
I would agree with that, yes.
A side effect, just like commercials that list all the side effects of potential side effects, right? Doesn't mean that if I take ibuprofen that I'm going to have an upset stomach.
Correct.
But it might happen to someone.
Correct.
And that's true generally of side effects, not just for antibiotics, but side effects for any medication.
Correct.
It's patient specific.
Correct. What you're describing, yes.
You were asked about the CDC guidelines. Based on your training and experience, would you agree that the CDC guidelines actually do not apply to palliative care?
I don't know.
And I want to go back to side effects, because you said that they could be synergistic. Remember that?
Yes.
But when you approved the orders with respect to the 2 patients that you were asked about, you hit verify, right?
Which 2 patients are you referring to?
Brigner and Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Okay. And there is another option though, right? Which is reject.
Correct.
There's even a third option, right? That if you have, you could call. You could call the doctor,
Sure.
get more information.
Sure.
You were asked a lot of questions about the bypass. Remember that line of questioning about this instance with the call that the nurse placed to you with respect to Timmons?
Okay.
And as a result of the call, you realized that you'd never seen that order.
Right.
So it was like somehow or another that order bypassed the pharmacy.
It appeared so, yes.
Yeah.
No idea.
You have no indication, right, that he even knew how to operate, you know, the Pyxis system in general.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I know you told the jurors that he called you about this one time about there's an override on the Ketamine. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And it's possible, is it not? possible that a nurse told him to call you?
Yes.
Because a nurse wouldn't call you. That's not appropriate, is it?
We got calls from nurses all the time.
Okay, so they could call you too.
Yes.
But certainly, if I'm a nurse and I say, doctor, call, right, that's not unusual.
I don't know.
Okay. I want to also just go back to my questions about learning, education, on-the-job experience, and literature. What's Lexicon?
It is a resource you can look at that has all kinds of information about drugs.
As it relates to this case and the dosages of fentanyl that William Husel ordered, did you ever look at Lexicon?
I don't recall. Probably.
Do you remember telling the detectives that you looked at Lexicon
Yes.
to determine if there was any maximum dose with respect to fentanyl? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And there isn't a maximum dose that you found, correct?
Correct.
In fact, Talon, do you remember your rebuttal letter to Mount Carmel when you got terminated?
I remember there was one. I have no idea what it says.
Because you were, fair to say you were pretty upset that you were terminated.
I was.
And you felt like you were being made the villain, right?
I don't remember.
Did you remember saying that you felt like you were being retaliated against?
Yes.
And in that letter, do you remember saying to Mount Carmel, you claim I authorized dosages I shouldn't have, and there's no policy or guidelines that say those dosages were too high?
Ask that again, please.
Let me get it. One moment, Your Honor. Just give me one moment. Let me approach first, if I may.
Okay.
Can I see it?
Yeah, and actually, can I have a sticker?
Thanks.
I wise before I sent you back to get one.
Oh.
How y'all doing? You okay?
Actually, I'm not going to look at it. It's his rebuttal letter. That's fine.
Right, okay.
Well, if I
Just
intend to
you're just
refresh.
kind of
If
trying
I-
to
yep.
refresh his memory. of
Yep, just
everything. Yeah.
give me 1 second. Okay. Do you remember in your rebuttal letter, and let me back, you were terminated, and then Talon, fair to say, you wrote a letter or an email to Mount Carmel asking that they reconsider the termination.
Correct.
And in that letter, do you remember saying, it was determined that this was indeed an unusual dose of medication. However, it was nothing even remotely out of the ordinary. Wait, one moment. Neither I nor any colleague to whom I've spoken recall any policy or even guideline in place at the time that events occurred stating that failure to escalate something would result in termination. Sorry, do you recall saying that?
Yes, something similar, sure.
Okay, because you were disciplined for not escalating it and also for the approvals, is that right?
To my understanding, yes.
Okay, give me just 1 second. Do you remember saying what dosing guidelines are being referred to in my termination incident? Question mark. Were said guidelines in place when the events occurred? Question mark. Were said guidelines hard and fast, unbreakable rules for prescribers? Neither I nor any colleague to whom I've spoken are aware of any policies or procedures that were in place when the incidents occurred.
That sounds familiar, yes.
Because there was no maximum dose of fentanyl.
Correct.
And if there had been, no doubt, Talon, you as a pharmacist wouldn't have let Dr. Husel order medication over the max dose.
It certainly gives you more ground to stand on when you're bringing it to someone's attention, yes.
And certainly gives you more ground to stand on when you hit reject, right?
Yes.
And certainly gives you more ground to stand on if Dr. Husel or anyone were to ever call you and say, why'd you reject that?
Yes.
Which brings me to something I was thinking of. Dr. Husel never called you once to tell you to push through an order, right?
Ketamine,
Fentanyl.
fentanyl, I don't recall, no ma'am. Not that I recall.
Okay. And we know, just based on your recollection, that ketamine isn't involved in these cases.
Based on my recollection, yes.
There's also prospective review and retrospective review. Talon, is there a place where you can write a comment?
Yes.
You can potentially write a comment, like this is suspicious, but still authorizing it or verifying it?
I think so. I don't recall.
But you don't recall ever writing any comments with respect to these 5 patients, correct?
That is correct.
Your Honor, I've got like 15 more minutes if the jury can bear with me.
Okay. Is that a foreshadowing?
Well, it's not a promise, but
That was more my concern.
I will do my best. You mentioned the central pharmacy in the hospital. Remember that?
Mhm.
And you weren't, I just want to ask you, give us the layout of the hospital. Where's the central pharmacy?
At West, it was on the first
Your Honor,
floor.
I'm going to start objecting to this stuff that's going on.
It's been asked and answered, yes, sustained.
Okay, I didn't know you had, but there's a central pharmacy separate and apart from where you are in the basement.
There's a central pharmacy on the first floor of what was Mount Carmel West, yes.
Just so we make it clear, the first floor and the basement are the same thing,
I'm using first floor as you walk in, off the street, and you don't go down any stairs.
okay? And is that's the only pharmacy though, other than what was stationed up the stairs in the units?
Yes, yes.
Which brings me to, if I'm on the ICU floor, which was 4 at the time, and I'm Dr. Husel, I could potentially just get in the elevator and go down to the pharmacy on 1, correct?
You could, yes.
Yes, and you never remember him doing that?
I do not.
You were asked about what you told the pharmacy board as to why these things happened, and you mentioned that it was the night shift, that there was less staff. In your employment file, is there, or there is not, any report of you saying that you were short-staffed or overworked? Would you agree with me that, Tom?
Yeah.
And again, we had the voice report. You could have used the voice report to say that complaint.
I suppose you could.
And you could have gone to Randy Miles and said, hey, we're overworked, understaffed.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't do that.
Correct.
And even in the night shift, the lights are on,
Yes, the lights are on.
and there's 30 beds in the ICU.
Roundabout, yep.
And would you agree with me that during any given night during your shift, that the ICU is a pretty busy place?
It certainly could be,
And let's just talk about when there's a code. Lots of people,
yes,
lots of action,
yes.
lots of attention.
I don't know about attention, but,
Well, just because it's a cardiac arrest situation, right?
right.
And at any given time, could you not have taken the elevator up and popped out onto the ICU and walked around if you had wanted to?
Yes.
We were asked about statements that you made to the pharmacy board.
Objection, Your Honor, it was not to the pharmacy board, it was to the pharmacy investigator.
To the pharmacy investigator. And we know that that was towards the end of the other interviews you talked about. Is that right, Callan?
Yeah.
Okay. And just generally, would you agree with me that during that interview, you were fighting to save your license?
I don't know what their intentions were.
But you knew that they could take your license.
I knew eventually that was a possibility, yes.
And you certainly didn't want that to happen.
That's a safe assumption, yes.
And so when you're making those statements to that pharmacy investigator who works for the organization that can take your license, just by human nature, you're making statements that would help you, right?
I was making statements that were true to the best of my knowledge.
But you agree memory doesn't get better with time.
I do agree with that.
One second. Your Honor, do you want me to just conclude tonight and do 15 minutes in the morning? I'm happy to do what the court and/or jury wants.
Just keep going till 5, Judge.
Let's go to 5. You promised us 15 minutes ago. Well, it wasn't a promise. We'll probably go till 5 too.
Judge, any chance if people are, I don't know what people's
No,
plans
I
are,
just,
we could push past so we can at least get
If
this
you write it
destroyed
down, I'll
done,
stick
so
it
you
No,
can come back for a
I have a
minute.
commitment tonight,
Okay. All right.
and I've given up enough of my life. I'd like to at least live a little bit.
Okay, Judge, I was just trying to help short tail.
I understand he's gonna have to probably come back in the morning,
Yeah,
because I don't think you can get it done in 10 minutes.
well, I don't think I'm gonna get 10 minutes, Judge.
I want to go back to this HR interview, which predated your interview with the pharmacy
Okay, let's get to the question.
and investigator, right?
Let's get to the question.
Okay. And do you remember telling the investigator that you searched online for some information with respect to double effect,
Yes,
the principle of double effect?
correct.
Because after the situation, you were still obviously concerned and bothered by it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you learn as a result result of that investigation, did you tell the investigator what you learned?
I don't recall.
Does it sound familiar that you said,
I would object at this point, Your Honor, first of all, as to relevancy, as to his opinion of what double effect means, and second of all, to the way she is trying to refresh the recollection of this witness.
Sustained.
Thank you.
may I approach, Your Honor?
Did you sustain on both relevancy and the way of manner of refreshing, Your Honor?
On the way of refreshing.
Would it refresh your recollection if you were able to review the notes of your HR interview, Talon?
Sure.
Thank you. What exhibit are we on? I may approach. I will mark it.
It was marked, I think, as Court 2, was it not?
Court 2?
Or let's call it Court 3.
Okay.
If it's just being used for refreshing
is.
and not being admitted, yeah, it'd be court 3 at this point.
Okay. Just to read it and refresh.
The other one's a little wider.
That's all right.
Bracket in there that's in blue.
Okay, yes.
Does that refresh your recollection as to what you told the investigative board with respect to your review of literature and double effect?
Yes.
Fair to say you told the pharmacy investigator that...
Objection, Your Honor, as to relevancy, as to what he told the pharmacy board regarding double effect.
Your Honor, he asked an
Let's
hour...
put your question on the record and I'll rule.
Okay. We'd heard like an hour of direct questions about what he told the
Okay,
pharmacy investigator.
your question, please.
Oh, sure. My question is, did you tell him that you didn't think it was euthanasia?
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay. Overruled.
I don't remember.
Do you remember being asked if you thought the medication that you verified caused the death of those patients? Do you remember being asked that?
Directly, I do not.
One moment. Just give me a second, Your Honor. You were also, just give me a second. Sir Talon, do you remember being deposed in your civil case in this matter? And during that deposition, you were under oath?
Yes.
Do you remember being asked the question, do you have an opinion as to whether the drugs you approved for these patients caused their death?
Objection, Your Honor. As to relevancy, as to his competency to answer this question, as to an ultimate issue in the case. He's not qualified as an
Okay,
expert in
time
this
out.
case.
Let's go sidebar. Ladies and gentlemen, talk to yourself.
Pyxis machine. You were showed pictures of it, you identified it. Talon, if you know, that machine requires a fingerprint and password, does it not?
Yes,
And then you know that Dr. Husel doesn't have fingerprint or password access?
I don't know.
But is it both a fingerprint and a password?
I don't remember. It's been like 3.5 years since I opened one of those.
But there are security measures on who can and can't access a Pyxis machine.
Correct.
And we know from, for example, State's Exhibit 24K, that when someone accesses the Pyxis machine, their name is on it,
Correct.
right?
Right.
Under username.
Yes.
And this 24K lists the patient name, and the username is the person that's accessing the medication from the Pyxis machine.
Yes.
And every Pyxis machine, if you know, has reports like this, right?
I assume so. I don't know.
Give me 1 minute, Your Honor. Oh, yes. When you get an order, a medication order, how long would you say you usually spent on reviewing it?
I don't know.
What would be a guess?
I don't want to guess.
But you have 2 screens, right?
You do.
And one of them is the patient medical records.
Could be, yes.
And so if you had any questions about tolerance, let's say, you could scroll through the medical record?
You can see what the patient has previously been given or whatever, yes.
So you could potentially see if someone had been in Mount Carmel for 10 days, how much fentanyl they had received over a 10-day period, right?
You could, yes.
Or how many opioids had been given to them for pain, let's say, over a 10-day period, right?
You could, yes.
And one of the things when you are determining whether a dose or order is appropriate is patient-specific, right? It's things like tolerance.
Yes.
And name some other factors that you consider when determining whether a medication is appropriate or not.
What did I say earlier? Age, patient age, organ function, like kidney and liver function, opioid tolerance, what they're treating, like whether it's appropriate or not for the desired outcome.
And those are all the things in your training and expertise that you took into account when you were reviewing orders that came through to determine if they were appropriate, correct?
Prospectively, yes.
And in addition to the medical record, we know that you could call
Correct.
upstairs, but we also know that while you worked, you always had Greg working there to kind of consult with too, right?
When he wasn't on vacation and stuff, sure.
Sure.
Yes,
And Greg had more years of experience as a pharmacist than you did.
correct.
I'll end with Timmons. As soon as I get those records. Can somebody- As soon as I get the, here we go. Okay. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 11B. I know you were asked about this on direct, and I've asked you about it too, but are you familiar with a bad death?
Familiar with a what?
Like what they call a bad death?
I am not, no ma'am.
So let's just go right here to the fentanyl, the order time. What is the order time on that?
Order date time 0300.
Okay. And then down here, the Versed is, would you agree with me, the same order time?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that the Dilaudid is actually 5 minutes later?
Yes.
So not ordered at the same time?
It appears not, yes.
And similarly, the Versed, this last order, the Versed, would you agree with me that that order is at what time does it appear?
0323?
Okay. So according to this record right here, with respect to James Timmons, these drugs that you talked about, that the nurse called you about, they were not ordered at one time.
Objection as to the nurse called you about?
The diversion call.
I permit
Objection as
it.
to the diversion call?
Okay.
Permit it. Do you understand the question?
They were not ordered at the same time?
That's
correct.
Nothing further.
Okay. I'm gonna, what, you gonna be done in 3 minutes?
I'm not done.
You want 3 minutes for it? Go for it.
I just don't want to be here till June. Can I start?
Yeah.
And I just want to start for a little bit here, where Ms. Menashe left off, if that's okay. And I'll make all of those
Yep.
words tonight afterwards. The diversion call. Remember Ms. Menashe asking you that?
I do.
I got it up here when we started in my notes. And then she called it that, the diversion call. I tried to count in my mind. Were you counting in your mind how many times she called it the diversion call?
I was not.
Was it more than twice?
Okay. Do you have questions of him or
Yeah.
about?
Was
Okay.
it more than twice?
I don't know.
Well, you know, she said at the beginning that she just called it the diversion call, right?
Okay.
You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember your answer?
No.
Okay. Do you remember saying it was one of the possible reasons?
I do.
Okay. Did Ms. Menashe ask you what the other possible reason was? Does one imply there was another one?
It does imply that, yes.
All right, well then let's finish on that. What was the other reason that you decided this needed to be arced up to Randy Miles?
Because the optics were not great.
What were the words you used to describe this dose that you saw from Mr. Timmons, if it really was for a palliative withdrawal and not diversion?
Has been answered, Your Honor?
No, this is I'm sorry.
Okay.
No. Sorry, Judge.
I'll give you the question, but is that your last one for the day?
Yeah, yep. Do you remember
Okay.
your exact words?
Alarming?
Well, that was what you told the police. Do you remember the words that you told the pharmacy board at 1:11 into your interview, at 1 hour and 11 minutes?
No.
If I were to show you
Yes.
Little Marcus Courts 3, this was a document I prepared for his attorney for review, pass along. A document, an email I sent to his attorney, asked him
And what are you using?
to refresh his memory.
Okay, but he didn't write this email.
He didn't have to, not to refresh memory. I could show him a tray of lasagna that would help refresh his memory.
Well, I'm sorry.
The day's getting punchy. Are we going to ask a question here?
May I approach the witness to
You
refresh his
may.
memory?
You may.
Can I understand the pending question, Sam? Could I ask for it?
Was can they refresh his memory?
As to what?
You asked the last question was, he was asking it to me.
Do you want the last question to the witness?
Yes, please.
Well, that was what you told the police. Do you remember the words you told the pharmacy board at 1:11 into your interview, at 1 hour and 11 minutes?
Okay, I would ask, and I understand what the court's ruling is likely to be, that I'm allowed to recross on that one point.
Okay. we will talk about it. Go ahead.
Showing you what I marked as 4, Exhibit 4. Just this one take long, at 111. Don't say it out loud, review it to see if it refreshes your memory.
Yes.
What were your words to the pharmacy board investigators if these drugs were not being stolen, if they were being used for palliative extubation? What were your words to describe that dose?
Wildly excessive.
Thank you, Your Honor. We can end there today?
So you're back tomorrow with this witness?
Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening. Remember the admonitions. We'll get started at 9. I'm glad nobody overslept this morning.
Thank you. All rise.
Oh, and we have 15 birthdays in a row. What? Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Huh? It was a great cake. I ain't buying 15 of them. I don't reimburse me. Huh? You're unfortunately back in the morning.
Did you provide any, in advance of you trying to refresh the witness on your emails to them? Could you also provide?
Okay, remember my admonition to you? Okay, we'll see you at 9 o'clock.
You just have
Okay.
tonight.
Let's deal with the record a little bit here. I have some concerns. One is the board that keeps getting flipped up. Okay? It includes things that are no longer under the indictment. Are we having a problem with potential problems in the future? Because I don't want to turn around and say, well, Judge, that got shown to the jury, and it wasn't the state doing.
No, I think what we could clarify is that the highlighted patients are those of the indictment.
Okay, then why do we even have the other ones present?
I'm sorry?
Why do we even have the other ones present?
Because what we were doing was showing the different doses based on the different palliative extubations. If you recall, this is the relevant dosing pattern
Okay.
for Dr. Husel.
I just wanted to put something on the record because it keeps flying up in front of the jury, and I don't want to have a problem 3 weeks from now where saying, oh, well, they probably shouldn't have seen that.
No, I
Okay,
wouldn't be making that argument.
okay. The other thing is, when asking the question about, Mr. Oziang said it was an ultimate question. The question was cause of death, and I didn't think he was qualified as an expert to give that. You can make whatever record you want on a proffer after I leave the room. In Ohio, the judge isn't present for proffers. At least they're not supposed to be. I know there's some of my comrades in the bench that think they should be, but that's not the purpose. It's to give you an open record. So if you guys want to make a record, cameras will be off, and we'll go from there. Okay, anything else before I leave?
Do you want to address this tomorrow?
No, I don't have anything. Did you address it tomorrow? Because I asked them.
All right, we'll address it tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, well,
I know you have a commitment tonight. Can we
I have a
something in the
commitment. I
morning?
got an hour's drive. It's by here by 6.
Regarding 404B, we'll talk about it in the morning then.
Okay, fair enough then. Why don't we plan on getting here at 10 till and deal with that stuff before 9 o'clock?
Just maybe we go sidebar for just a moment on something.
Sure.
All of us? Or me? Just me.
Fine.
No consent tonight?